Yes, we are live. Great, thank you. All right, I have 6:01. Good evening. Welcome to Beaumont City Council regular council meeting for Tuesday, March 12th of 2024 at 6:01 here in City Council chambers. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:01 and begin our meetings as we always do with our land acknowledgement. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all First Peoples of this land, whether they be a First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich vibrant communities across the land. As we gather here in Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis Nation, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibilities to protect and honor the treaty, the inherent rights of the people, and the land. Next on our agenda is proclamations, and we've got 3 this evening, and none of them are short. So bear with me for a moment, and I'll get through them with you together here. International Day of the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, March 21st, 2024. Whereas the City of Beaumont is committed to the belief that equal opportunity and equitable treatment should exist for all people. And whereas every resident of the City of Beaumont has the right to realize his or her potential, regardless of race, color, cultural, or ethnic origin, and live at times in conditions of dignity, respect, and peace. And whereas in 1966, the General Assembly of the United Nations designated March 21st as the International Day of the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. And whereas elimination of racism and racial discrimination can be accomplished through mutual understanding, acceptance, and respect for the dignity of all people and rights of all people. And whereas elimination of racism and racial discrimination is a social and moral responsibility of each person. Now, therefore, it be resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim March 21st, 2024 as International Day for Elimination of Racial Discrimination in the City of Beaumont, dated March 12th, 2024. Second proclamation. World Down Syndrome Day, March 21st, 2024. Whereas in December 2011, the General Assembly of the United Nations designated March 21st as World Down Syndrome Day. And whereas approximately 1 in every 750 babies born in Canada today has Down syndrome, and an estimated 45,000 Canadians are living with Down syndrome. And whereas research and early intervention had dramatically improved lifespan and potential of those who are affected by Down syndrome, but more investigation is needed into the causes and treatment of Down syndrome. And whereas possessing a wide range of abilities, people with Down syndrome are active participants in educational, occupational, social, and recreational activities in Alberta's communities. And whereas people with Down syndrome have tremendous potential to live full and fulfilling lives as contributing members of the community. And whereas the City of Beaumont values peoples with Down syndrome and their families and supports the well-being of all individuals with Down syndrome and their ability to function as fully accepted members of society. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim March 21st, 2024 as World Down Syndrome Day in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated 12th of March, 2024. And lastly, give me 1 second. Earth Hour, March 25th, 2024, 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. Whereas our nation's use of energy continues to increase, resulting in detrimental effects on the world's climate. And whereas it has been estimated that turning non-essential lights out in Canada for 1 hour could save as much as 15% of the energy consumed on an average Saturday night. And whereas energy savings will reduce carbon emissions in our air, preserve the natural resources used to produce this energy, and set a positive precedent for the rest of the nation, and result in ongoing reduced costs for the community, taxpayers, and businesses of the City of Beaumont. And whereas participation in Earth Hour 2024 will provide the residents of the City of Beaumont with insight into the impact of lights on energy consumption and raise community awareness on the need to conserve energy wherever possible. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim March 25th, 2023 as Earth Hour in the City of Beaumont, dated 14th of March, 2024. Thank you for letting me get through that. Appreciate that. Next is our adoption of the agenda. Madam Clerk, any changes to the agenda this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. Administration does not have any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening.
Thank you very much. We put the motion on the screen to adopt the agenda as circulated. Member of Council willing to move the motion to adopt the agenda? Councilor McCook, would you be so kind?
Ms. Mayor, I move that the March 12, 2024 Council agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion, members of Council? Seeing none, Council, would you please vote to adopt the agenda as presented? That carries unanimously, 6-0. I should mention also Councilor Telebus is not available to attend this evening. He is disposed of another event, and we'll see him in Council next Tuesday at Committee of the Whole. Next on our agenda is open forum. Madam Clerk, any open forum discussions this evening from any members of our residents?
Thank you, Mayor. We do not have any open forum
Thank you.
presentations.
Madam Clerk, would you please put the consent agenda on the screen, please, for council to review? And I'll ask for motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented, barring any changes to the consent agenda from member of council. Council, you have the consent agenda before you. Any changes to the consent agenda from any members of council this evening? There are a number of items on it. Seeing none, member of council willing to move the consent agenda as presented. Councilor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5.1, special council meeting minutes, February the 20th, 2024. Item 5.2, regular council meeting minutes, February 27th, 2024. 7.2, review of councillor appointments to external boards and committees. Item 7.3, recommendation to council online registration process. 7.4, 2023 Beaumont by-election non-compliance campaign disclosure statements. And 7.5, recommendation to council alcohol in the parks pilot program.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion on the consent agenda as outlined by Councillor Barnhart. Seeing none, council, I'll ask you please to vote on consent agenda as presented. That carries unanimously, 6-0. Thank you, council. All right, next on our agenda going down, we have a registered presentation, 6.1 Edmonton Global. Who is here this evening from Edmonton Global to please present? Welcome. And let me get your microphone on here. Give me a second. Madam Clerk, I'm having a little difficulty. I'm hitting the two buttons here. Nothing's coming on for the mic. It's usually these two right here. No, it's being difficult. Just give us a second. And when we're ready, please state your name for the record. And, oh, that's really weird, eh? Oh, it's flashing over here now. Okay, that's good. It's got moved on my screen. My apologies. Your microphone is on.
Okay.
And we have about 10 minutes of the presentation, give or take a bit, and some time for questions too. So again, welcome to council and please proceed.
Great. Thank you to the council for the opportunity to speak and present today. My name is Heather Stewart. I'm a board member with Edmonton Global, and we'll just do a quick round of introductions. I am the president of BBE Expediting, a business at the Edmonton International Airport, and also one of the owners of the company. A little bit about my background. We've been located at the airport for over 20 years and serve a unique market. So do a lot of work into the northern marketplace, into NWT and Nunavut. However, we run a supply chain and logistics business that's located at the airport and connects all over the world for our customers. Part of me is I'd love to see, the logistics hub at the airport grow. Obviously, I have a really unique interest in foreign direct investment in Edmonton. I've been part of different things like KLM Air France coming to Edmonton, Air China Cargo launching routes into Edmonton, but they definitely need passengers and cargo to see that grow. So I'm a new Edmonton Global board member as of December. So I look forward to working together. I know you guys have some very exciting things going on with an innovation park and logistics interests, and really thank you for having us. And I'll turn it over to Mustafa for a quick introduction.
So I'm Mustafa Sahin, Executive Vice President of Investment and Trade for Edmonton Global. Been in the Edmonton region now for a little over 3.5 years. I actually might not know it, but I was in the same hockey arena as Councillor Munchkoff-Swain last night because my brother-in-law's wife's daughter plays for Beaumont's girls hockey team, and we were both in stuff. But apparently it was better than the night before.
Okay, you're out of here.
Yeah. So she just lives on Billy Doe Crescent. We were about to celebrate his birthday tonight, and I came down here to do this, and then we're going to go back.
Oh,
So,
how nice.
but I've been with Edmonton Global for 3.5 years. I run the trade investment team, and look, we're excited about what's happening in the region. We appreciate your support, but this is something we do on an annual basis. We come out to each one of our shareholders. We try to give a bit of an update, but more than that, we want feedback because you may not know it, because some of you may not have been around when Edmonton Global was created. It was before I was here, but this is one of the largest experiments of regionalism in the country. And it's something which a lot of the rest of the country looks to as the model that they would all aspire to, but it's also not easy. And we recognize that because 14 shareholders, lots of different perspectives, and one size certainly doesn't fit all. But I think without going into presentation, because we're not actually presenting much tonight, we really want to listen more. What we've done in the past 4 or 5 years to get this region to be on the map more globally is a big step forward from where we were. And that was the first challenge. You know, people didn't think of Edmonton. Site selectors are a big part of that business. We surveyed them. 82% of site selectors in the US had never heard of Edmonton, let alone ever been here. And so that was a big challenge. So anyway, we're excited to be here. I enjoy coming to Beaumont because I've got family here, but you have one of the unique communities in our region. And I think that you've got a unique value proposition. We enjoy working with your EDO team, Jen and Wendy, and we look forward to continuing that relationship.
And for the purpose of tonight, you know, traditionally we, Edmonton Global uses these meetings, board to council really as an opportunity to present updates. But tonight I think we're under obviously some time constraints, but wanted to use this as a chance to listen for some feedback. You know, today our board to council engagement is really just kind of part of a larger process of listening to our shareholders, and you know, we've been doing that since the 25th of January. Edmonton Global has retained Darren Rawson and Mary Cameron from the Ozone Discovery Group to conduct interviews with mayors, CAOs of all of our 14 municipalities. We've retained Chris Steele as an international site selector to have conversations really on an individual economic development officers to receive feedback, you know, from that perspective. And there's a shareholder ad hoc working group also established to assess the performance of Edmonton Global and make recommendations really to the shareholders about what our next steps are. So we appreciate the valuable feedback of Mayor Dunlop very much, providing some of the 7 mayors as part of the working group. So tonight we really had 3 questions to ask. You know, and opening it up to you, what's working, what's not working, and what does success look like? So at this point, we'd like to hear from you.
Okay. At this point, maybe I'll start off for the sake of council. As you know, we're on the working committee. It's been established to, after some municipalities gave their notice to leave Edmonton Global. One is adamant they're going to leave. The other 4 are open to talking, and they're on the working committee as well too, which I'm also serving on. So it's very exciting about that. Beaumont's position has been, we are a regional player. We believe in regionalism, and we believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. It's a bit of a cliche, but when it's used properly, it's truthful. And that's how we see it. Edmonton Global is, I think, a good economic driver for this region. Beaumont's position at the current time is that we are continuing to support Edmonton Global. I'm working on the committee to try and find a way to keep those municipalities who have some concerns, keep them within Edmonton Global, should they choose to do so. I know at this present time, I'm not sure I briefed council properly on to be responding to questions from you. However, we're happy to do that as best we can. But at the present time, our position is we're supporting Edmonton Global going forward until we see a reason not to, and we don't see that reason coming in the near future. So with that, that's a bit of a preamble. I'll open up the question. I see Councilor McGough-Swain has a question for you, or response to one of your questions. So Councilor McGough-Swain, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for coming. Nice to see you again, Mustafa. I didn't catch you in the hockey rink. I was, you know what it's like, chasing 3 kids around, or 2 anyway. So first, thanks for coming in, and I thought it was really important that you informed or reaffirmed that that this is an annual thing that you guys come and do, right? This isn't a reaction to some disappointing news across the region, and I've always appreciated those updates since it was, you know, online and COVID and Malcolm coming across and trying to explain what was going on. And so, yeah, the value, and Mary, you spoke to it really well about regionalism and Beaumont's approach on this. But yeah, some specific questions. I'll give you some specific answers. A couple of things that I'll speak to is where I'd really like to see you guys pick up a bit more is when it comes to different issues that are impacting the region, they don't directly have a link to you guys, but indirectly. And so things like, you know, whether it's wastewater or whether it's transit, whether these big, large kind of regional issues that we're trying to figure out, right? Clearly, those sort of things, you might think, how does wastewater or how does transit, like they have such a direct impact on you guys, right? And so you know, when we tried to go through, and I'll just speak to transit because it's a bit more where I'm at, you know, I didn't feel as though Edmonton Global did enough to voice, you know, the impact of what that is. Like when you guys are out there, you're fighting, or I should say competing with different markets around the world, right? And a lot of these markets have the transit is just it's already there, right? And so I would have liked to have seen you guys take a bit more of a position in front of that, particularly with the city of Edmonton before they shut that vote down. And so just moving forward, for me, it's just having I don't want to say better pulse because that's not fair. I don't know what you guys are looking at on a day-to-day, but just keeping a pulse on some of these regional issues. You know, it's housing, it's all these regional things that we're trying to solve, or the mayor is trying to help solve across the board, and really see you guys dive into that a lot more. I think.
Sort of regional advocacy.
Yeah, the advocacy piece, and just inserting yourself into the conversation a bit more, right? Like you know that having, you know, proper housing is going to make a big difference for what we're trying to attract in here, right? And so, you know, I think people, you know, when it first came up, when you look at you, it's like, okay, like what are you going to do for our borders here? How are you going to bring in a large business into Beaumont? Well, it's not about that, right? And you guys do a good job of explaining that. You know, you use the metaphor about rising ships or boats. I don't know what it was, but it made rising tides. You know what I meant. Yeah, I don't know. Ships don't rise, I guess.
I'll get you a plaque.
Yeah, thanks. So we get that, right? Like an investment in Leduc County or an investment in Strathcona or wherever, like that helps bring in. So that part is understood. Maybe not by all, but certainly not a concern for me. But where I really like to see you is helping in those regional issues and being more directly getting involved in the advocacy side of things. So that's just my initial feedback for you guys. Really appreciate the annual visits and I think, you know, you guys are always open at different conferences, always around. So appreciate that. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. So on the same idea, one thing about Edmonton Global is that we fully realize in Beaumont, for example, when you come across an opportunity for an investor or a company to come to the Edmonton region, and they say they want to build a distribution center, you know, something not heavy industrial, something that kind of fits our vision of potentially some area around us. They need 2 hectares of land serviced to build something. We don't have that. So sometimes we're out of the running because we don't have serviced land at the disposal that other areas have within our region. But that's okay, in the sense that I made a point last EMRB meeting as well as Edmonton Global that as a mayor, I can see any mayor within 30 to 40 minutes in our region for lunch or for a meeting, which means you can live in Beaumont, work in Fort Saskatchewan, live in Beaumont, work in Stony Plain. So we're really big on the regional aspect of what Edmonton Global is trying to do. So we're supportive for sure. Councilman Newkirk, Stephen, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks. I'll pick up the ball from Councillor Moncloswain a little bit just on transit, for instance. One of the places that I gained the most insight and knowledge around transit and its importance to a region, our region and a growing region, is from talking with Malcolm. It's from attending Edmonton Global events and webinars and those types of things. And time again, a required piece is transit, and you're being asked what is there for transit, what isn't there for transit, and you know that is a important decision-making tool, right? So just want to acknowledge that that's where I've got my transit education around its importance to trade and bringing investment to the region. So switching gears to communication. So unfortunate news, for Edmonton Global, with 3 communities talking about leaving or giving notice. 5, there you go. So what hits my email box? Are you guys part of this? How much does it cost? Who are they? Sounds like a good place to cut. So, that's where some work has to be done. You have to understand the audience, but and I also know that you're not going to connect with everyone in Beaumont, but I think that Edmonton Global as a group owes the shareholders some more communication about who you are, why you're important to the region, why you're important to residents of Beaumont beyond these annual updates. I don't know how to do that, but I looked on your website, you've got some communication people that can probably figure that out, right? But, you know, when the first thing that hits my email box is, you know, sounds like a good place to cut. I don't think that's probably the news you guys want to hear from residents, and you don't want the residents pressuring council to do that. And,
Communicating the ROI and the value proposition is really important, especially to this audience. EDOs deal with this more regularly. They have a different view, but I think even more than mayors, it's the councillors, and we need to equip you with more tools, communication tools, to make it easier to explain the value proposition.
yeah, so what I'm challenging, just to be clear, what I'm challenging is Edmonton Global is to communicate to our community.
Okay.
Yeah, outside of this room, like, I think we're getting it, the community's not, and pressure comes from the community to, you know, to unfund Edmonton Global, right? Like literally within a few days of that news coming down, right? So just to be clear, you know, that's my challenge is, you know, try and communicate to the community. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know the best way to do it. You know, feel free to talk to our communications team and get some ideas on how to best connect within Beaumont, but I think it'll be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great comments.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you. I was around when it first started. So I do recall, and it's like you said, it's an experiment, and I think it's working, but it's hard. And I really echo what I'm hearing my colleagues say. It's one thing for me to say it's a really good idea and and it's going to pay off in the long run. I'll try to translate to a taxpayer what that's about. It's really difficult. It's really difficult. So the message is not only to us, as has been said, but in a simple way that we can, and I don't even want to say simple, in a tangible way. What does that actually mean? So if there are some examples, certainly when we supported the airport and the work that you're doing there, by the way, I'm all for female entrepreneurs, so thank you very much for what you're doing. But the idea of advocating, and I think the other point I wanted to make was on housing. If we encourage and have more investors coming and more business, but we have no place for their workers to live, it's foolishness. And right now we're in this region alone, not counting Edmonton, 666 units behind over the next 10 years. So we have a lot of advocacy that we need to have happen so that funding comes with some of that development so that housing can be built and developed, and affordable housing to start with as well.
I think we had some success, as a region advocating for a couple of the deals that landed. Applied Pharmaceuticals, the Canadian Critical Drug Discovery Initiative, the RASOL funding. If you think that there's a way that we can help to advocate, bring the region together and advocate on the housing side, is it more at the federal level or the provincial level you think that we
both, but I think the provincial level, actually, it's more on the business level, the developers and the builders who can work in partnership. But then we also need it's a whole conglomeration of partners that have to come together. It's land, it's location, it's where are we going to put the housing. So it's one of those things that requires quite a bit of collaboration. And I think we went away from it on a regional level with the Edmonton region and kind of working out a sub-regional level. Not sure that that's as good as it can be, but it's a little bit more manageable for the people that are there. Anyway, long story short, I think what we're doing is the right thing to do, but I don't think the messaging is on in terms of the specifics that we need to be able to sell it to our taxpayers, to our ratepayers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCook. Kat?
And thank you for coming, as always. I don't have a lot more to add that my colleagues haven't said. I think that's kind of the crux of where we're at. I think perhaps part of the communications piece, I'm going to go a little bit different than the regionalism, because I think that's, once again, we kind of get that up here, but when you're talking to individual communities, they're still going, well, what's the impact for us? So maybe some of that communications piece or the updates when you guys come here once a year could be a little bit more specific to Beaumont. What did we miss out on? Why did we perhaps miss out on some investment? Is it the transit piece? Do we need to boost that? Is it housing? What are some of the things that investors were maybe looking for? And also, what piqued the interest of investors to Beaumont as well. So why did people, look at Beaumont and say, hey, this looks like a great community to invest in? Maybe we're just missing that one piece. And so that's something that we could understand and look for kind of moving forward into the future. So maybe just some of those specifics when we have these conversations, so they are out there and people can have a little bit of a better understanding as to, and as to the work that you guys are doing as well, knowing that, Beaumont is part of the conversation, because I think that sometimes gets lost in it. People always think that it's just Edmonton, but it is a regional effort. And I know you guys consider all kind of communities around and stuff like that, but it's good for our community to know that.
Just so you know, when, because I spend a lot of time, dealing with foreign investors and opportunities. When opportunities come to us, we never talk about any of our specific jurisdictions.
Mhm.
We just tell them about our regional assets as if it's one large piece. We don't get down into the specifics until they're willing to actually start looking at sites and have the calls with the EDO. We're saying, okay, now the requirements are becoming more specific for the other side. So just so you know, that's the approach we take to the outside world. It is one piece of geography, and we always refer to it as the Edmonton metropolitan region. Never the city of Edmonton, never just Edmonton, never even just Edmonton region.
Right.
But I'll say, like, we appreciate this feedback that there's a missing piece of communication, which is that value proposition to the citizens who you have to represent. And I think we would love to work with you. And maybe it needs to be more than once a year that we're here. And maybe it needs to be in some type of a public forum in partnership with EDOs where we talk about issues or opportunities or something.
Yeah.
We're open. We really want to find more tailored ways of engaging with each of our shareholders on an as needed basis, because each one has different needs, I think.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Time, one quick question or comment from Councillor Penrod, and then I'll do a quick summation and we'll right on track for 6:30 hard stops. That works out very well. Councillor Penrod.
Thanks, Mayor Daniluk. I'll try to make 2 points that round out the conversation fairly briefly. One, I think there's room in this feedback. That's where I'm in agreement with my colleagues. It's about communicating that broader return on investment, as you've said so well, to the citizens, the ratepayers, if you will. And you've mentioned some ways to do that. And I just think there's room to go in the other direction too, and help people understand what Edmonton Global gains by having Beaumont as a member. So some of the story that we can tell around what in particular is brought to Edmonton Global, what particular gifts, skills, regional attributes do we bring to the region and help to contribute? Because we're a smaller community, I think we sometimes have that little man sort of syndrome, maybe a little bit of feelings of inadequacy. And so I think that's part of the story that needs to be told. The other piece I'll just say, hopefully briefly, is we hear a lot about quantitative pieces, right? Like how much money is being brought in, the investment, the impacts of that investment on the region, and how that floats all the boats in common. I think what I hear from our residents is they're equally interested in the qualitative stuff. So when we bring this kind of global investment into our region, how does that impact global economy? So I've had lots of conversations lately with people who are deeply concerned about ethical and economic impacts of conflicts in the Ukraine, conflicts in Israel, Palestine, and the way that we're implicated in those things. And so I think if we can tell some of the story about, as we've done well in Alberta in some ways, about saying like, hey, if you want to talk about energy systems that are ethical and environmentally responsible, we do that well here, right? I think we could tell some of that same story about how we can drive our investment and be a part of moving the global narrative forward. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could just give one example to Councillor Penrod really
Please
quick.
do.
So one thing that we advocated really hard for last year was to get a larger Alberta presence at COP28 in December in Dubai. And we were successful. We convinced the Premier to come. So the Premier was there, the Deputy Minister of Energy was there, the Minister of Environment was there. We had a delegation from Alberta of 150 people who were in Dubai at COP28. And one of the reasons I advocated for that was I wanted Alberta to tell its energy transition story to the world. Because a lot of times we get misconstrued as being part of the problem, when in many ways we are part of the energy decarbonization solution. The other two things I'll just add is We as Alberta, as the Edmonton region, have a critical role to play in two issues that you just touched on: global food security and global energy security. We produce very responsibly. We are conscientious. So part of the work we're doing is to raise our profile so that we have more opportunities to take our rightful place, because we are geographically, strategically located to be feeding the part of the world that has the highest growth, which is in Asia. And our proximity to Prince Rupert is the most direct way to send food. We're blessed. We have water, we have agricultural land, which is bountiful and which will be producing for many years to come. This is our part of our regional narrative, is we are an important cog in two big issues that were not on anybody's radar 2 years ago: energy security and food security. So thank you for asking that.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. We're going to wrap up in a moment here, but thank you again for coming. It's always great to have you guys on an annual basis, as Sam mentioned, not just because of what's happening. It's an annual thing, and March is our time to have you guys come and visit us. One thing I'll quickly surmise with is that last went to a Global Edmonton event. I met a couple of these site selectors you referred to, and they're already here, and they're quite amazed what our region has to offer. And I find it frustrating for you, and also an opportunity, that 82% of the site selectors don't know about Edmonton and the region. That's a big opportunity for us. It's also a point of frustration in a way. How can you not know about us? You think about it, but they don't. And so they're getting more informed about Edmonton and our region all the time. So again, thank you all for coming. Much appreciated. And we'll see you again next March.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Or perhaps sooner, yes,
Or
but
perhaps
next March for the
And-
official annual visit.
There's a shareholder call Thursday morning at 8 a.m.
Yes, I'll be
What
on
a big
that.
announcement.
Yeah, I'll be on that.
Really surprised that talks about the regions of value. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Really appreciate it. All right, next on our agenda is we have our Protective Services Level of Service Report. Director Melvin. Oh, yeah, I didn't see him leave. Here he is. Director Melvin. Doing crowd control. All right, welcome. We have a special table for you.
Very nice.
You're welcome. You might need more chairs, actually. That's okay. Yeah, no problem. Yes, feel very, very protected. Awesome, thanks. You'll pardon the pun. Well, thank you all for coming this evening. Much appreciated. There's only one microphone, so as you need to speak, please make sure you pull the microphone towards you so we can hear you quite well. People listening at home can hear you quite well, but the sound here isn't the best as it can be sometimes. So again, welcome. We're very much looking forward to this report. It's a very, very detailed report. And you can see, I've got a whole bunch of stickies on this thing myself. I'm an old paper guy, so I like being able to do some marking up and hit the paper and all that. So it's gonna be a great report. Looking forward to your presentation. I do expect we'll have a couple of questions when we're done. So we've allotted a fair bit of time this evening for this. This is probably our biggest chunk of this evening, is this presentation, for all kinds of reasons. So with that, I'll ask Ms. O'Neill to interject, and then we'll begin our presentation. Ms. O'Neill.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll introduce our guest tonight, if that works, and give some additional context to the report that's before you. So good evening, Council. Today, we have brought the Protective Services Level of Service Review for discussion. This project is part of an overall long-term growth planning and analysis project that has been underway in alignment with the city's municipal development plan. Nearly every week, we meet here in council chambers, and consistently the conversation revolves around how quickly Beaumont is growing. This rapid growth is confirmation that Beaumont continues to be one of the most desirable places in the region for people to live, play, and raise their families. But this rapid growth is also the basis of many of the challenges we face as a municipality. One of the top priorities we have as administration, which I know council also shares, is the need to plan for this growth strategically and sustainably, and make sure our current and future residents have reliable services. Our current models have served us well, but we are at a crossroads with increased demands. There are important decisions required soon in order to sustain policing, fire services, and municipal enforcement for the community's future. And there are some more immediate investments required to catch up with growth. This evening, we have Jay Melvin, the city's Director of Protective Services and Fire Chief, and along with him is the TSI team who undertook this important work. As noted in administration's accompanying report, our internal next steps are to evaluate the recommendations put forward by TSI. Administration agrees with the general direction of the recommendations, but the recommendations require additional analysis and refinement since they represent very significant operating and capital investments. TSI has included potential financing options in the report that assist with reducing the burden on the taxpayer. However, more work will need to be done by administration to explore all potential options and opportunities. Through the annual budget process, we will prioritize and bring forward recommended operating and capital requests for consideration, as well as funding options. Lastly, and not covered explicitly in the TSI report, administration recommends further analysis into the RCMP's current service delivery model in Beaumont. For example, crime patterns and trends may require specialized units that may be of benefit to the surrounding region. Administration is not suggesting a transition away from the RCMP, but rather an analysis with the local detachment if there can be any benefit to exploring shared resources with other RCMP detachments. The Alberta Indigenous and Municipal Police Transition Grant Program provides a one-time grant funding up to $30,000 that is available for a feasibility study that considers various policing and community safety models to determine whether and which model might be the best fit for the community. Applying for this Government of Alberta grant does require a council resolution. We are looking forward to council's discussion with TSI and moving forward on this important work. I'll turn this over to the TSI team to introduce themselves and begin their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. Appreciate that. And just a quick thing too, this report will be used many times in the future, not just one and done tonight. This is just the introduction, the report, ask some questions, and we're going to be taking this report and going forward with it and using it many times going forward. So it's not a one and done, just to give people listening at home an idea what the context of the presentation is. It's a very detailed report. And with that, I'll throw over to you guys to introduce yourselves and present to us, and we'll have some questions when we're all done.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I am Douglas Agor, Project Manager for your level of service review for protective services. I have over 45 years of experience as a CAO in municipal government, and I'll ask that each of our team members please introduce themselves. I'll start at my right.
Good evening. My name is Rick Simodi. I'm with Transitional Solutions, approximately 14 years. I've got retired from the RCMP, about 36 years service. Also, I was into private sector and security, and also consulting and emergency services. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Good evening. I'm Judy Unsworth. I'm a retired fire chief of 25 years. I've been with TSI in the role of Director of Emergency Management for the last 2 years.
Good evening. I'm John Simmons. I'm been with TSI for a couple of years now, and I have a varied public and private sector background in law enforcement over the last 20-something years.
Good evening. My name is David Reynolds. I've been with TSI for 6 years now. In a previous career, I was 30 years in municipal finance and administration, so I'm the finance guy on the job. In that career, I did many protective services budgets, and I led the Strathcona RCMP detachment municipal staff for about 4 years.
Perfect. Thanks. Before we begin, just so you know, we can hear you here quite well, but the microphone is for the recording purposes, as well as our administration behind you who maybe can't hear you speak towards them. So please use the mic when you're speaking individually. This was fine introductions, but for the recording, please do that. Thank you.
So first off, Mr. Mayor, I would like to recognize Maureen J. and many administrative staff for their continued support throughout this project. As you know, your community is changing. Beaumont is no longer the small Francophone community on the south side of Edmonton. You're now a city of over 55,000 people. We could go to the first slide, please. Next one. Thank you. Thank you. As you can see from this slide, I'm sure you've seen these stats before, the city is one of the fastest growing communities in the capital region. The growth brings all kinds of pressures to the city. One of the challenges that your city will face is increasing demand on policing services. When the city of Edmonton puts pressure on a component of crime in their city, the criminals typically move their activity to the surrounding area. And I live in Spruce Grove, I can attest to that. In our report, we're going to be recommending a silver level of service. Council is responsible for setting service levels and determine if you want to provide optional services. For instance, have you ever had discussions on firefighters providing medical response until such time as the ambulance arrive? Council needs to understand that service levels are determined by council, either by policy or resolution. Your service levels should be reviewed on an annual basis just before administration starts budget preparation. When it comes to a new facility, we are recommending a gold standard, and we will speak to that at the appropriate time. And with that, I will turn the mic over to John. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Doug. If I can just get the next slide, please.
Enforcement services?
Yes, enforcement services, please. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So I just want to have a brief overview and talk about staffing real quick. I'm going to loop back to that with my next slide, just kind of setting the stage for, no, sorry, if I could. Yeah, just. Now I'm dancing. Thanks. Thanks very much. So I want to, for a pathway forward, looking at priorities and future-proofing the city of Beaumont, we're suggesting that we look at 4 aspects for for my part of the presentation today. One will touch on staffing. The second one we'll look at is the integration and collaboration, where we're looking to bring municipal services together under that protective services umbrella. And we're looking to explore amalgamating space for the 3 services under one roof, so to speak. I'll also talk briefly about records management and data analytics with the old adage that you can't manage what you don't measure. So we're suggesting that we look at bringing in changes to or enhancements to the records management system that is currently in use. My understanding is that it is a new system that is being brought in. We're just recommending that there are enhanced services that are available with it, and we're looking to potentially increase to that level. The other thing we're looking to look at is a shared resource, and you'll hear that from my cohorts here about a shared analytical resource that can take that data information, turn it into the intelligence we need to make good decisions. So that's about a decision-making piece, and then again, that alignment across the board. That, of course, is all kind of lockstep with the fiscal considerations. Some of the suggestions that we have and the recommendations that we make, there is a cost that comes to them. There's also a cost of not doing them, and the report should highlight those things as well. And we'll touch on that a little bit later. If I could get the next slide, please. Just kind of regroup on that notion of staffing. The major recommendations using a model that's population-based, looking to suggest to bring in an additional number of officers. We're also looking to continue funding on the casual positions that are already in place to supplement or to backfill those positions when required to ensure there's a seamless integration of services and we don't have gaps in service levels to the citizens of Beaumont. Also looking to increase the administrative support in that so that the officers can be on the road doing what they need to be doing and their role clarity of that, while administrative duties and the burden of administration and court preparation and things like that, those kind of matters are taken care of by the right folks so that we can ensure, again, having those folks on the road where they need to be. One of the other recommendations that you'll see in the report is about the notion of a middle-level manager coming in to support the Director of Protective Services. What this will also do is ensure that the supervisor, the frontline supervisor, is out leading their staff and assisting where needed for frontline duties. Currently, that position is straddling the strategic, operational, and tactical elements, and that is a number of areas to focus on. This middle-level manager will ensure or assist in the alignment both with other partners within the municipality and the RCMP, but also make sure there's good strategic alignment with the strategic intent with the day-to-day operations that are being carried out by the officers in the community. If I could get the next slide, please. Where does the value come in for these services? I did a brief slide just kind of showing the benefit or where the value add comes from that. With that, potentially, depending on how it's implemented, will increase or has the potential to increase coverage. And currently, like the report outlined, you are hitting service levels where we do have fairly good coverage, but there's inconsistencies and gaps in it. The additional resources will assist in making sure that we minimize those gaps or those outages, if you want to refer to them that way. The other thing that is there is the mental health or the welfare of the officers. That's part of that as well, that you can see improvements there by spreading out the workload and making sure that those officers are not being overworked or able to continue to focus on a good balance of health and wellness working with the municipality. From a more citizen-centric approach, the ability to have more officers will increase that visibility and accessibility. So when complaints are being made, there's timely responses to them. They have a greater access to make complaints, and the officers can respond in a more fluid and nimble way. All of that encapsulates moving forward to future-proof the city of Beaumont. And at this time, I'll turn it over to, I believe, Judy.
Judy.
Thank you. Nice to see you all again. If I could move to the slide just past fire services. So the one that has the pathway forward. That one, perfect. So I'm just going to do a really high level review. I'm not going to talk about specific recommendations, although these are recommendations. And the first step to getting to a full-time fire service, because I think you need to take baby steps in this, is to empower your leader. And that is to immediately hire 2 fully trained firefighters to replace your chief and your deputy chief. They're doing a lot, and they're expected to be at the fire hall to manage calls, and that is unheard of in a municipality your size. I really admire Chief Melvin because he is your director and your fire chief, and that is a really big job. The next one is to set the course, and myself and Doug were out here talking to you guys about setting the course and setting the level of service expectation and making it a policy within your bylaw so that you're working with your experts, Chief Melvin, to set what kind of fire service it is that you want. And then the step 3 would be to staff for the demand. So our suggestion is that you move to a 7-day-a-week full-time service, and in the evenings and weekends, in the evenings, you would rely on your paid on-call people to help out. And then the last one is to build, excuse me, a multi-service building that you can run a 24/7 fire service out of. So those are sort of the steps. And I'm going to touch on step 1, empower the leader and staff for demand, in the 2 slides. So if we could move to the next one. Thank you. So what we're suggesting is you use a silver service level, and that would mean that we are at 7 response capability for 7 days a week. I just wanted to highlight that piece. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So if we talk about empowering the leader, and this is a bit tricky, and we had a difficult time writing this, so it was understandable. So just nod if you're getting what I'm saying. Currently, so if we look at the blue, empower the leader, you have 6 full-time fire personnel. Your administrative assistant doesn't respond. So in terms of this report, we're talking about number of responders. So the first step that I had said was to move to having the chief and the deputy not respond. So you're going to add 2 people, but your total number of fire personnel is going to go to 8. Does that make sense? Pretty easy. And then staff for the demand, that is to get us to the 7 days a week. So we're going to add more people. So you're going to promote from within or hire to that level. So we stayed at 5 responders all the way, but we've taken the chief and the deputy off. And then what we need to do is hire 2 more to get to that 7 day a week. Is that okay? And then the next step to go full-time would be to have a building that suits everybody together. In order to be a full-time fire service, you're going to need to do some renovations to your fire hall. It may end up costing you more in the long run than it would be to just bite the bullet and get to a multi-service building. But that we're not talking about tomorrow or next year. We're talking about as you can afford it, or conversely, as the pressure of the service demands it. Thank you. No, it's you.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yep, thank you very much. Mine won't be as long as the other folks there, but I'll keep it very, very short. If we can have the next slide, please, Maureen. Thank you. And one after that, path forward. The first thing which we have to look at is, and I just want to kind of explain a few things here. Beaumont has the privilege of being a very safe community. It is a very safe community. It's a beautiful community here. They have a lower than average provincial crime rate, and this is a contributing factor, as we all know, what people want to call this home, safe community. That's really important. However, Beaumont's growing, and every effort has to be made for emergency service to grow with the community. You can't just not grow today and think about it 5 or 6 years down the road. The community's growing, you have to grow with the community. The police services or all emergency services, that is very, very important. it's a mid-sized city now, and it's bringing its own issues. As you know, and one of the things, you're close to a large center. And as Doug's mentioned before, with the large police services, they have special units that will turn around and they will put pressure on certain organizations, and they tend to move out into smaller communities. And then you get the overflow. And that's what's going to happen here if it hasn't started already. And it has happened in other communities in around the Edmonton area and Calgary area. So this is something that we always have to keep in the back of our mind as police services. What's going to come out here and what are we going to do to get it? We have to be proactive, and we have to have the tools to be able to, work with what's going on here. But it is imperative before any increases are made to the resources for the detachment itself. Detachment commander has to come to council or through administration and explain what he's going to do with them. It isn't like we need 3 or 4 bodies and we're going to go along with it. No, what are you going to do with those bodies, and what's your plan for them? And there's got to be feedback to council as to what are your successes. And for a consultant to come in and say, you need this, this, and this in your community, it's the detachment commander who's your expert, and he's the one that should be deciding where the pressures are, along with his management team, and decide where those resources should be going. And what we're recommending is about 1 officer for about 1,100 people. That is the average right now for municipalities between 20 and 40,000 is about 1,080. And that fluctuates year to year. It depends on how many people, how many officers order from different communities. But normally speaking, for a community this size, 1 to 1,000 is a good ratio, basically, to have a good, effective police service. With the RCMP, you don't have to worry about specialized units at this size, like identification services, dog services. You have access to emergency response. You have access to all that stuff through the provincial side. So that's why you can be a little bit more higher on the police to population ratio compared to other communities that are larger or smaller. An example, Camrose City Police, they have roughly 20,000 people there, and I believe they run about 30 sworn officers, as an example. So but they run a whole different service compared to what the RCMP does. So there's lots of things that, there is shared resources in the background that you can use and to have an effective organization. And next forward is service coverage for today's needs, enhance the services to move to 24/7 coverage. Detachment itself, there are some quiet times where you have officers that are on call. It doesn't mean that there's no services. There is services involved. But what happens is that your officers are stretched so much they can't have boots on the ground 24/7. So by going to a full 24/7 coverage, it will eliminate the need to have officers on call. And most of the things is that. I just lost my train of thought here. I'm sorry about that, folks. The biggest thing is, especially in the evening times, when you do have calls come up, and there's nobody, and you have your officer on call, you can always depend on other surrounding detachments to help out. But it all depends how busy they are. And your citizens deserve to have somebody here 24/7 to answer calls. If something serious happens at nighttime, especially during quiet times, they call, you expect to have somebody there at a very, very short time. You don't want to wait 15, 20 minutes or half an hour. You have to have somebody there. It's community safety, and your community feels safe, and that's what you want. We come down to staffing levels, as John was talking about. Municipal support clerks are very important and a very important component to how the police service is run. K Division, Central Alberta District, along with K Division, recommends a ratio of 1 support services personnel for 2.5 officers. In policing, there's a whole bunch of administration work that has to be done, from processing, maintaining files, front desk duties, assisting officers, and with their core files, and the list is endless. It goes on and on and on. Cost of hiring an RCMP officer is very, very expensive. We all know that. And to have an officer sit there and do administrative tasks, it's a very, very poor use of resources. Police officers' primary duties are to attend calls, investigate crime, and keep the peace. It is more cost effective to have a municipal clerk do administration duty and task and support the frontline officers to keep the officers on the road where they belong. And that's the important part. Keep them on the road. They're expensive. Officers are expensive. It's a lot of money to hire an officer. So get them to do what they're supposed to be doing and leave the administration tasks to municipal employees who are very good at their job and know what they're doing, and probably 10 times better than what an RCMP officer to actually do that type of work. And if we look at officer efficiency, to hire a crime reduction analyst as a municipal support position when they come available. As previously mentioned, to maintain an effective and efficient services, investigating crime is very expensive. We have to be smart in how we use these valuable resources. The days of just an RCMP officer or any police officer gets in a car and gets out to the front door and say, well, am I going to turn left and turn right? Those days are gone. Those days are gone. When an officer starts a shift, they should have a plan, be visible at high-risk areas where previous crimes were committed. A crime analyst will be able to look at historical data and other information to assist officers in reducing crime and apprehend criminals. Developing a proactive policing goal and understanding new trends will also assist officers in their duties. A crime reduction analyst can also assist on non-criminal matters, such as building traffic plans based on traffic accidents, complaints, and traffic flows, citizen complaints. It will also greatly assist the CPOs in execution of duties as well as automatic traffic enforcement. We have to be strategically, when we do policing nowadays, it has to be strategic. We just can't, like I said, we just can't go through and drive around. We have to know what's going on in our community, what's happening, where it's happening, and that crime reduction analyst, a lot of detachments are having those now, and the province are having those. It's a smart way of doing policing. It really is. You know where the crime is, you know what you're looking for, the type of people you're looking for, and you have the officers there. What's the point of driving around in subdivision A at 3 o'clock in the morning? Nothing ever happens there, you know, and yes, it's nice to have the visibility, but that doesn't prevent crime like it used to. You have to be there at the right place, the right time, especially being close to the city. Criminals are very transient now. They're not like they used to be where they stick around, and they're all over the place, and they're so well equipped, their communications and all that stuff. You have to try to step one step ahead of them. In closing, I just want to say that, again, Beaumont is very fortunate and privileged to have a safe community. I've always loved this community, and I'll be quite honest, when I was first transferred to Leduc many years ago, I wanted to live in Beaumont because it's such a beautiful community, but my contract stated I had to live in Leduc. Leduc's a great city, don't get me wrong, but I've always had a soft spot for this community. It's a beautiful community, and something that you're proud of, and every person I've ever spoke to that live here, they're proud of this community, and I can see why. But it's changing. It's a mid-sized city, and the criminal landscaping will be changing. And just look over the last few months of type of crime that's been committed, and just what you hear on Global and CTV and the Edmonton Sun, it's changed quite a bit, and it's going to keep on changing because it's growing, and we have to keep on top of it and prepare for today and the future. Thank you.
Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. You've got a minute. And the one after that. Thank you. So this is a page right out of your report, and Doug and I are going to co-present this. Did you want to start? Would you like me to?
So what we're talking about here is option one, where you construct an addition to the existing building. And this will accommodate additional resources, but with your growth that's happening, that's a short-term solution and may not be the best use of your dollars in the long term. And then option two was construct a multi-level standalone building to accommodate both enforcement and RCMP. Integrating both services under one roof will regain operating efficiencies and provide appropriate future accommodations. And most municipalities are moving now towards that goal of where RCMP and enforcement services are together for efficiency. And Judy, I'll let you speak to number three.
For sure. It's the option that we're recommending. Again, this is not a tomorrow thing. This is a long range, but we really see with your city expanding, there is a need to house full-time firefighters, and that includes a gym and a kitchen and sleeping quarters. And those additions are not possible in your current location. Additionally, you have a director of protective services who manages all three of those things at the same time. And I think, and he has never said this, this is my opinion, he's doing a lot of running around trying to manage those groups of people. So you become just more efficient. And in this world, and I'm speaking on behalf of fire, but we work very closely with community peace officers in RCMP. And it's not unusual to have one of all of three of us at a big event. So thinking about spending your investment wisely, we're strongly recommending a multi-service building to house all of us in one space.
If we could go to the next slide, please. Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
So we're recommending currently the bottom half where that star is to locate your new fire hall. This is land that you own. And we have done drive time from a fire perspective. Your community isn't so large that you can't get anywhere in less than 10 minutes. One of the things we're recommending for the fire department is traffic annunciation so we can have the lights change as we're approaching. They will probably be driving the speed limit, but we measured it out and you can go from that star to any area in under 7 minutes. There is a map that was provided for us by Chief Melvin and his group that currently show you can attain anywhere from the center of the city. The same is true from that one point. So we're strongly recommending that we house all of them together. And when we did our research, 5 of the 6 municipalities that we did comparators are now housing everybody together, which makes sense from a customer perspective as well. It's a one-stop place. Now it's on to you.
Now we'll move on to the financial.
Thank you, Judy. Mr. Mayor and Council, my pleasure to be here this evening. I'm going to talk about the financial impacts of the recommendations. Tonight, we heard about the recommendations for protected services. The report includes 53 recommendations, and many of them have financial impacts. Those recommendations will require financial investment in fire, police, and enforcement services. On the screen, you'll see the 2023 approved protective services budget versus the projected fully implemented operational budget that includes all recommendations. I'm the guy who gets to tell you it's $6.9 million. You'll notice most of the increases in salaries and wages and in contracted services. The $6.9 million represents 21 FTEs, 10 in fire, 5 in RCMP, 6 in enforcement, and 9 additional RCMP officers. The $6.9 million is represented by a $4.4 million increase in police, a $1.8 million increase in fire, and a $700,000 increase in enforcement services. Police is by far the biggest increase in the recommendations. In fact, it encompassed 64% of the increase. Included in that $4.4 million for RCMP is a $3.8 million increase projected in the RCMP contract, moving to 26 full-time members. Currently, the town is approved for 17 members, but they budget for 13 due to vacancies, through transfers in and out, and through illness. So it's a big impact because you're moving from 13 in your budget to 26. It's almost a doubling. It is a doubling of 13 additional officers. So RCMP is by far the biggest impact in this projected budget. I think I'll leave it there. And I'll let you, it is, RCMP is the biggest, fire is 1.8, and enforcement is 700,000. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. The report has many pages of financial analysis, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Dave. If we could go to the next slide, please, Maureen. Thank you. So this slide here is right from the report as well, and it speaks to the long-term solution, interim solution, risks, level of service, whether it's bronze, silver, or gold, and funding. Now, as Dave has just detailed, these costs are astronomical, and we know it's not going to happen within a year. But there is some good news on the horizon in that the release of the recent provincial budget, there is a local growth and sustainability grant program coming. They have not released any details of it, but that's a program that's basically geared toward fast-growing communities. So Beaumont certainly should be in good standing when it comes to that. In closing, Mr. Mayor and Council, I would just like to thank you for selecting transitional, and we're prepared to answer any questions you have on the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A lot of detail in this report, as I alluded to earlier. We do appreciate the depth and the scope of the report. That $10 million price tag is not coming tomorrow for sure, as you mentioned, but that is a big number, and it is over going to 26 officers. That's going to take a number of years to get there. So people listening at home won't be hiring 13 officers tomorrow or 6 full-time firefighters tomorrow. But this report does provide a very good framework for future discussions and laying out the groundwork for the next 2, 3, 5, even up to 10 years. So one quick question before I go to my council members for their questions, just a quick thing. When you mentioned short and long term, maybe in the report, I didn't remember seeing it. So when you mentioned long term, is that probably 7 to 10 years down the road? When you talk about short, medium, and long term, what are the ballpark years on that? Just give me an idea on that. I couldn't see it in the report. If I read it, it didn't stick in. Just on the horizon.
So it varies for each, I'm sorry.
Oh, hang on a second. No, you're back on again. Go ahead.
That was me.
Oh, I'm sorry. It varies for each of us, so I can speak to fire. We've, and I'm looking for it in the report madly, like a wild woman. It is in there, that we've got projected years. So, and the trigger points are different for each of us. Oh, thank you. You're so awesome. It's under the frontline staffing page where we've sort of done a year-by-year analysis from 2024 right to 2043.
I do remember seeing that now. I'll find it myself, but thanks. I won't
Yeah,
waste any
you're
time
welcome, of course.
looking for it right now. So with that, I'll open to members of council for questions. I imagine we're going to have a couple of 3. So who wants to start off the question period here? Councillor Penrod. Oh, Councillor McCook, her button went on first. So Councillor McCook, you have the floor, followed by Councillor Penrod when he's ready. Councillor McCook.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the very thorough reports. I know this is what you guys do, but I definitely appreciate how readable it was, and everything right down to the assumption section was a great read. And clearly we need to go through it a few more times as it's quite thick. But it definitely, I think, represents a milestone in our ongoing efforts to ensure the safety of our community amidst our rapid growth and our evolving needs. Based on everything. I know sometimes that there's a bit of a narrative out there that we're not doing enough as it pertains to protective services, but I think doing this report and getting this done definitely outlines our next steps forward rather than just throwing things at the wall and hoping something sticks. I think moving forward as well, it's imperative that we carefully kind of consider each recommendation put forward by TSI, by all of you guys, by weighing our feasibility, the fiscal impact as you guys have outlined, and obviously the alignment with our long-term strategic objectives. And I know administration will help guide us through that. And a lot of that is also laid out in the report. So definitely appreciate the thoroughness. A few of my questions. So, I know perhaps one of these might be administration, or perhaps you guys may know this. I know we will be having the offsite levy discussion soon. If you guys have any experience, should we go down that path for a financing option, how quickly from when offsite levies, development levies are kind of decided on and implemented, how quickly does that kind of follow through?
The offsite, Mr. Mayor, Council, to the councillor, offsite levies are part of the MGA. They're approved in the MGA. I can tell you not many municipalities do it, but every project that we are doing for this type, we are recommending it, especially for communities like Beaumont, like Spruce Grove, that have really significant growth. Growth should pay for itself, not taxpayers. And part of that growth is the expanded need for fire or a multi-facility. And that includes an offsite levy, and it's embedded in the MGA that you can do that for fire. And Judy's talked about a new expanded fire station. It's going to take a bylaw. It's going to take some engineering statistics. It's going to take some building estimates to get the true cost of of what that's going to be and then separate between what the current residents and what future residents should pay. The future resident share is in the lots of all the new development. I drove in today and just a lot of development going on. I'm going, they should have a offsite levy in those lots for fire. But it's going to take some time. It's going to take some analysis, and it's going to take some construction estimates. And through planning bylaw, it should be implemented. I think they could probably do it, Doug, in this year if they had to.
You could get your bylaw in place this year, and to me, that should be a priority for council. Is getting your offsite bylaw amended so it includes fire and even library if you want to go there, because that's permissible as well now.
Perfect, thank you. Another question on the records management data analytics. You suggested that we bring in changes to our new system, or basically enhancements. Can you just clarify for sure our new systems will be able to pull some of this data that you guys spoke of, but we will require some enhancements. Can you just speak to those enhancements a little bit? And
Chief Melvin?
Oh, sorry. Hang on, Mr. Melvin. Your mic is, hang on a second. You got too many mics on right now. Give me a moment here. Your mic's on, Mr. Melvin.
Yes, through the mayor to Councilor McCook. The new software that we went through several years ago has the ability to I guess, get to the next level. Right now, we haven't explored that. We're waiting for, obviously, this report to be presented. And it's something that we're looking at. Obviously, the RCMP has a very detailed crime analysis section just within the RCMP itself. It would be good if we could do the same thing with the municipal enforcement, that we can track construction waste. Where's our concerns for there? Where's our bylaws concerns? Where do we have issues with community standards that we can try to map this area? Right now, we're doing it kind of manually. We pull the data and have a look at it and kind of plot it on the map and say, okay, this is where our problem areas are and this is where the thing's done. But obviously, as the city continues to grows, the more automated you can get, the better it would be. So the current software we have is expandable, but we don't have any plans for expansion in the 2024 budget.
okay, thank you. And just on that, can you speak a little bit more about the level of service framework that's proposed? Is it, I guess it's for all of the protective services. What resources does it take to kind of complete that full level of service framework, and what's the kind of start to finish?
I was hoping he'd say no, he'd handle it. Through the chair to the mayor. What we're talking about is working and identifying community risk. So when Doug and I had done the evening workshop, it's understanding the community risk and how you're going to manage that. So do you want to go to every single thing that's happening in the community? What level do you want to have that service set to? And also, when you make that dedication, you need to understand that there'll be people to fulfill that service. You'll need training, and you'll need infrastructure to support that. So it starts with understanding what the risk is. And we've done a sort of high level touch on that in the report. But I would rely on my experts. Certainly Chief Melvin, I know, has a really good handle on what that is. And again, working with our CMP and your community peace officers to have that. And it's really an open dialogue about what the risk is and how you want to manage it. You probably don't want the firefighters or your EMS people going to every broken thumb, but you probably want them going to structure fires or motor vehicle collisions, and how many people are going to do that and to what level are they going to perform that service. So we have an example of that as an appendix in the back of the report. And again, it's an example one. I know when Chief Melvin saw the report, he was like, we provide more services than this. I hope that you don't take it as what you're currently providing. It's an example of what a level of service policy looks like. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess just from perhaps Chief Melvin could add into this, just from an administrative perspective and resource perspective as to creating one, what does that look like for us?
Chief, your mic's on.
Through the mayor to Councilor McCook. Obviously, right now, we would, the first step is we would kind of detail the council, okay, this is what we currently provide with the current resources we have. Then we would look at, okay, well, what pressures are going to happen in the community that's going to need to increase the level of service. When it comes to a level of service, a lot of the things comes from the residents through council to say, hey, we want this, or we need this, or we want more coverage for this. We want, so all of those things, the open lines of communication between administration, through to council, through to the residents to say, okay, well, what level of service are we looking for? We want more community peace officers. We want them 7 days a week. We want them 12 hours a day because we're seeing, based on our analytics, we're seeing an increase on the weekends when we don't have any officers, or we're seeing an increase of noise issues when we don't have any officers on after 4:30. We need to adjust this. So as council brings those things forward, we would bring back, yes, if we want to increase the level of service, this is what it'll be, whether that'll be an FTE, whether that'll be an FTE plus equipment, or whether that'll be an FTE plus equipment plus infrastructure. So they're kind of set those levels, but a lot of that things will be, we sit down and for council to understand, this is what we're currently doing with the resources that we currently have. And as more asks come from councils, then we negotiate and go, okay, well, if we're not increasing any resources, what do we have to kind of drop off so we can kind of catch up on something else? So a lot of it is that open dialogue, but I think our next step after this is to sit down and let administration compile some of the information, come back to council and say, okay, here's what we're currently doing, so that you're well aware this is all the services that we provide under our current budget and our current resources. And then from there, we would go, okay, let's develop the level of service policy based on what we currently need. And here are some of the benchmarks that if we hit, whether that would be call volume, whether that would be growth in residential, whether that would be growth in commercial, all of those type of triggers. There's going to be a variety of things, and it could be even, as we commonly see within the RCMP, files per officer, right? If it's going up and the officers obviously can't handle that much files, then all of these things come in. But the biggest thing is that we need to have that communication with council, let you know what our level of service policy is. Let's get that developed. And then from there, we look at what the triggers are. And as we bring forward through to budgets, now you understand, and then there's the data to support it, to say, here's the triggers from our level of service policy, and now we're at this next level. Whatever that will be, 7 days a week, 12-hour day coverage for the fire service, whether that ought to be a couple of CPO officers to increase to the weekend coverage, depending on what council is getting for feedback, what we're providing to council, and collectively we can come up with something that works.
Perfect, thank you. So it's very much like a live document that we're consistently updating and changing and stuff like that. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Just one more question, and I'll open
Please
it up to
proceed,
my other.
Councillor.
So I know there's speaking about kind of some additions, changes to RCMP services and efficient utilization of resources and stuff like that. And you spoke to a crime reduction analyst kind of position that may be beneficial. I presume this is a civilian position hired through the RCMP?
The mayor to council, it's a civilian position, or but usually hired. You can be hired by a municipality. Get a job description, look at the job description, and hire somebody to do the job. Get the person trained. The RCMP will have a lot of input as to the training and whatever else needs. But it is not a full-time regular RCMP officer. It's a municipal employee. At least that's what I would recommend.
Okay, so that
it's a lot cheaper that way.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And that wouldn't have been counted then in officer or admin positions to hire?
Maybe an admin position in a 1 to 2.5.
Oh, okay.
I would think that you could probably afford to have
In the
that
admin
person
position. Okay, perfect. Just want to see where it would maybe fit in numbers. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the excellent report. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Councillor. Next, I have Councillor Mokoff Swain, followed by Councilman Newkirk, followed by Councillor Penrod, followed by Councillor Barnhart. Councillor Mokoff Swain. Yeah, and he withdrew, so we'll get him up. We'll get to him for sure. Councillor Mokoff Swain, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you for the great report. A lot of reading, but maybe I'll start with you, Chief Melvin, and just to acknowledge when you came on, you could have easily said, hey, I need these things tomorrow, right? And you could have come and I've seen different leaders in your position come on and use different tactics to get what you need. And, you can, quite frankly, you can scare council up here, right? And force them into decisions. And it's pretty hard to go against someone in your position, right? So I just wanted to acknowledge that and really appreciate that you took a methodical approach, and we tried to go through this process before kind of lining out that path. So thank you for that. As someone who has absolutely no background on this, I appreciate your professionalism to this. To that point, I think this is the third or fourth similar report like this, right? And so what I'm really, not taking anything away from the report itself, but I guess my question, big picture, is, okay, what makes this one stick, right? Last time we did just a fire, no, maybe not last time, but we did a fire services one specifically, and there are some recommendations in that, and then that kind of drifted, right? So how do we make sure that we actually follow this and it doesn't just collect dust?
Chief Melvin. Director Melvin.
Through the mayor to Councillor Muckhoff-Swain, thank you for those comments. I appreciate it. From my standpoint right now, obviously in my role, I can't, let's say, continue to push this down to another budget year and another budget year, and then I'll come up and go, surprise, this is where we're at, and force our hand. There's a lot of information in this report that's going to take administration several budget cycles to implement. But once again, we have a standing document that covers protective services as a whole. A lot of times you'll see fire master plans, you'll see this part. And what our approach is that if we're going to do an assessment of protective services, let's do an accurate assessment of protective services, and not just piecemeal it and go, okay, well, we got this report for this one, we got this report for this one. Obviously, I've read through the 2018 report prior to my arrival, and I was aware of what was in it. I'm well vested in this report and the information in there. But as I spoke earlier, a lot of the things is going to be administration to communicate that back to council to say, okay, this is our level of service that we're currently doing. Is that an acceptable level of service? What are we going to need to increase from year over year so that we can, one, lessen the burden on the ratepayer, but also to lessen the burden on the service, so that we're not overtaxing either one. And so right now, I would expect council through administration to hold me accountable for this, and ensure that what we've done, and if council accepts the report as yes, this is an approach where we need to go, knowing that how fast the community is growing, then all I would say is you hold me accountable, and we'll keep to the report, and we'll continue to push to ensure that we provide an excellent level of service to the community from years to come.
I appreciate the response there, and I think you summarized it around the full kind of protective services. I think that's a good metaphor for the options around the building. For what it's worth, that third option makes all the sense in the world to me, around making sure we get them all in one spot, and we can't continue to just kind of I won't say the word, but the different solutions around just tacking on to different little things, and we'll just keep implementing capital, and ultimately we need to get there. So I was interested to see that response times wasn't an issue. You identified a location, whether that works or not, but just to know that where you are, you can still get to where we need to be. The piece that I don't want to say is missing in here, because that's not the point of the report, but maybe for Ms. O'Neill, this is focused on protective services, but there is a bigger conversation as well around some of the other preventative options, and how do we have the conversation around whether it's FCSS or how does that interlink with this, right? So it's one thing to hire a whole bunch of people here, but there are other paths around this. So I don't want to look at this purely as just protective services. I got to look at this holistically as how do we support the overall community of Beaumont? So just from an administrative perspective, how do you view that kind of piece playing into the overall health of our community?
Ms. O'Neill?
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Markov Swain, thank you for the question. This ties back to growth once again and making sure that all of our service levels across all of the business lines can keep up. So we are working on long-term growth plans. We're working on facilities planning. We're working on the long-term financial engagement and sustainability for the city. So it does need to come together as a more comprehensive growth plan. We do have it in our work plans to bring this information back to council throughout the year at multiple times so that you are prepared during the budget deliberations.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, I just, I don't want to make a decision in a vacuum, right? And so I want to make sure that when we're talking about this, we see that full approach that administration is thinking about. Because this, I won't get into the philosophies around all this, but there's other ways to look at the health of our community. The report itself, pivoting to that, I won't take the bait on the 24/7 piece. I'll just leave that for now. But there is the conversation that we need to have up here around. There's some comments around the community wants to feel safe versus are we actually safe, or all this sort of stuff. But now's not the time to get into that. I think for me, what I really want to stress is the importance of us sticking to this. And you talked about us holding you accountable, and sometimes we deal with many things up here, right? And so yes, we'll try to hold you accountable, but our expectation is that you guys weave this into the report, because it is a fantastic report. I think you've got the toughest part to try to sell the financial piece, and because sure, there's the new grant piece that the province is coming out. If protective services was the only thing that we needed to do, then sure, this is a great path. But we're going to look at infrastructure, recreation, and you all know this. You've had that challenge for many years in your previous role. So, nothing more from me on this. I really wanted to stress the value of the report, but making sure that we look at this and it doesn't just come back. I don't want to see a budget item that says, we need to hire 3 more officers because the report, what it said in March, right? Like, how is this collectively looking at the community health in general? So thank you. I guess I should close with, and really appreciate the fact that you bring that broad spectrum into this, and it's not just a one-stop shop. So you guys have done a fantastic job. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newkirk, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. The report is very thorough, as everyone has said. And besides hire more staff, build more stuff, plan better, do all the things, one of the things that actually stuck out for me was on the creation of 2 new reserves. And this question for administration on that. So in the report page, I had 130. I don't know how that stacks up in my document versus what everyone else is looking at, but it says a long-term reserve strategy should include an optimal reserve balance and an annual contribution. The 2 new reserves one would be for fire, the other one would be for ME. And the suggested minimal contribution to those reserves would be in the amount of depreciation. Sounds like a good financial tactic. So attaboy on that one. Question for administration. Do we currently have a reserve that accounts for the, let me just see what I wrote here. Is there currently a reserve that provides the backstop for the depreciating capital assets described in this report? Or do we have a gap right now?
Mr. Blanco, do you want to tackle that question? Your mic's on, sir.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Through the mayor to Councillor Van Newkirk. So once again, I'll caveat that it hasn't been fully evaluated by finance, but yes,
for sure.
Fleet and equipment reserve encompasses the fleet and equipment and within protective services.
Yeah, and that's what I thought it would be. So just I guess what I look forward to is the review, as Jay Melvin has said, of all this document alongside what we have, I would suggest that, having a category for, or having two more categories in that might be helpful and more visible to the community, especially since the investment that's going to be required in the mid to long term here is significant. But the next thing that the thing that I'll close with is on the infrastructure side is one of the challenges we have in a fast growing community is the, grave need for more infrastructure, right? More walls, more furnaces, more boilers, more square footage, more parking, all of those things add up. But if you're going to do something, then, you should get it done, right? As you said, in option one, the addition probably, gets us a little bit of time. Option two is option two, but it doesn't only wraps up two of the services, and option three would bring all three together. So the other issue Beaumont has is we're space challenged. As you saw, the star that you guys put on the map is right in the northwest corner of the Innovation Park, and you probably are aware of that. But what I took from that dot on the map is more south side of the city with good access in and out. That's kind of what I read from that dot. It was less about build it in the land allocated for an innovation park. It was more about that accessibility piece. So infrastructure needs are very important, and we're going to be looking to administration to try and roadmap some of these infrastructure needs in the community and put this, add this to the list of things that are required as the community grows. So thank you very much for the effort you put in. Very much enjoyed our evening session where we did some brainstorming and planning for this, and I think you did a good job of wrapping up a whole bunch of that up. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Penrod, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor Daniluk. And I'll just echo the comments of my colleagues. Thank you for the report. We are trying to pride ourselves on being a community that makes strategic decisions based on data. I think you've given us a lot of helpful data points. So we appreciate that. It's going to take me a while to digest them. I want to limit my questions to two. I'd like to ask one that's kind of a high level philosophical question, if I might. And then I have a little bit more technical question. So the philosophical question, I'd like to aim at our experts, but feel free to respond to administration. There's a common theme in the community. I wouldn't say it's universally held, but it's a strong opinion in the community that goes something like this. Boy, we just keep hearing that all of our problems are coming from this rapid growth. And by the way, not unlike yourself, we kind of like this little town, this small city that we have. That's what attracted us here. So why does this growth have to be inevitable? Why can't we just pump the brakes on the growth? And why can't we draw a boundary that says, this is the size that we want to be, and we're going to manage our growth actively? Pretend you're on the doorsteps with me, and you hear that comment. I'd just like to hear your take on it as far as how realistic is that attitude? What are some of the contextual issues that maybe the common narrative doesn't necessarily take into account, the complicating factors? And what are some of the downstream risks maybe of that approach of really trying to limit our growth aggressively?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, you can limit your growth if you decide to. You can shut development down. There's a community in southern Alberta that basically laid out their future as to what they wanted for their boundaries and what their population was going to be. And they instilled it in policy. What happened was it was built up totally around the community by the rural community. So all their planning was for naught in the end, because they weren't able to control what was happening around them. And that's what can happen here. You can say this is what we want to have within the city of Beaumont, but it can build up all around the city. So you haven't really accomplished anything in the end. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Don't think I am, but that's the reality of it. It's very difficult to manage. So.
Thank you. Just extend the opportunity to administration if you want to speak to that at all. It's fine if not.
Ms. O'Neill, if you wish to wade in, if not, that's okay. Your mic is on
Thank
if you wish.
Through the, I'll just fight for one quick second, through the mayor to Councillor Penrod. The other piece that I would add here is that there could be increase in housing costs if that were the case. And that would go against some of the philosophical aspects of housing affordability for the city. And to Doug's point here, we know that East Vistas are right up against us as well. So it would happen in the surrounding community for sure.
Yeah, it seems to me that one of the core values of Beaumont is not necessarily attached to our size by population number, but I think we have for generations prided ourselves about being a community where we look after our neighbors. We have that strong sense of neighborliness, and that drives our sense of security and our sense of community. And I think if we extend that, you know, just drawing a hard boundary around our community and saying, this is how big we are going to be, and if you live outside of our boundary, good luck to you. That kind of defies the thing that has animated this community for decades, right? And so even if we did that, it wouldn't get us off the hook for, you talk a lot about having mutual aid agreements. And so eventually we're going to be building fire halls that are servicing the county, possibly Edmonton itself, other neighboring communities. And so I just think that it's a real sentiment in the community, and I resonate with it. And I think we need to, as we make these decisions, I mean, I think we need to give the message and have conversations that doesn't necessarily assume that the growth is inevitable, because that's when people start to dig in their heels a bit. To hear the anxiety and then to engage it and steer it. That's some of what I'm taking from your report and your response, so I appreciate that. And so the more technical question, probably a lot more straightforward. We've got all of these challenges around our growth, so I'm really interested when I hear about a new tool, at least new to me, for how to do that. So we've been talking, as Councillor McCook said, about deploying a new tool in the arsenal of offsite levies, and you've already spoken to that, so thank you for that. But I zoomed in on page 141 of your report, at table 39, I believe, at our neighboring community, Stony Plain. So you've noted that they have a differentiated mill rate that makes it plain for their community members and ratepayers what part of their taxes are supporting protective services. And so I just ask you to give us a bit more color on that. Are they an extreme outlier and innovator? Is this something happening other places? And maybe to administration, are there legislative or other considerations that we would need to tackle if we decided that that was a direction that we wanted to move? Thank you.
Please.
Mr. Mayor, through you to the
Yes, thank
counselor. Yeah, we put that table in there. We actually, Stony Plain is one of the first municipalities I've seen that. I was quite supportive of it when I saw it. When I say that, you know what, when you have a municipality and you spend $10, where does your first dollar go? Protective services isn't too far down the list, and to have a separate mill rate on the tax notice to show residents what they're paying for protective services, for fire, for RCMP, for enforcement services, I thought that was very creative. And that's why I put it in the report. I was actually excited to see it, and that's why I was kind of excited to recommend it. The report has extensive increases in protective services recommended. This was one of the tools I thought that the city might use to fund those challenges in the coming years. So I offered it as a recommendation, and I thought it was very creative.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And the expertise and experience that you bring is phenomenal. It kind of blows me away, and I don't even want to ask a question because it'll show my ignorance about what this is about. And I have a lot more reading to do, for sure. So I'm going to stay a little bit higher level in terms of the process. And I will make one comment before I go to that question, and that is that I love the integrated nature of it. I did notice as well, as Councillor Monkoff Swain has mentioned, the prevention aspect. It's not here, but it wasn't meant to be. I don't believe it was in your scope. But to me, that's a consideration. If we're spending more money here on protection, what are we doing to prevent the problems in the first place? And so I think that upstream expenditures are really important to me as well, and I want to see that whole picture. And I know we will, and I know that Ms. O'Neill has said that we'll be seeing that again. That's kind of where my question is going. It's process-wise. This report came to us with a recommendation to apply for a grant. I got the right report. Okay. And by applying for that grant, that's going to help you to do the detailed work. Ms. O'Neill, do you want to speak to that just a little bit to make sure I understand that?
Ms. O'Neill, please.
Sure. Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart. I know the motion is a little perplexing, as is the title of the grant and the scheme of this whole report, but the government of Alberta does have this grant out there. And again, the title of the grant is a little, again, perplexing is the only word I can come up with, but really our intention is not to consider a municipal police force as part of this analysis. It would really be the working with Beaumont, the Beaumont detachment, the Duke detachment, Central Alberta District, to see if there's any services that can be delivered effectively with that regional lens that we spoke about earlier. That's the intent here.
That's what I was hoping
Yes.
we were doing, and this is not all the resources you'll need to put to the detailed review of this, but I'm sure
No.
it's going to help with that.
It's one piece, and it does require a council motion to apply for
To
this
apply for
grant.
this
So
grant.
we thought this would be an appropriate place to put that in.
Okay, I
Thanks.
kind of put 2 and 2 together and got 6, but I wasn't sure if I was
Thank
doing
you.
it right. Did I have one other piece? Well, yes, and again, to the administration, the timeline of all of this for us in terms of council and where we're going to be seeing it next. So I'm assuming that we can still move on this in terms of Chief Melvin looking at it and starting to review it. But when are we going to next see, we as council, is it at budget time? Or, I mean, I'll put my 2 cents here. I don't think it should be that far away. I think we need to delve into it a little bit more, but not in the weeds, but into the philosophy around some of the policy changes that are being proposed. So could you speak to that?
Director Melvin, your mic's on now.
Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart. Obviously, there's lots of recommendations in this report. We need to look at this administratively now, outside of more of protective services, but there's other departments within the city that are going to be affected some way or somehow by this report. There's certain recommendations in here we've already moved on, mutual aid agreements, other things that we've already been talking about. How is that process going to work? So there's several things that we're going to do it, and absolutely we'll be coming back to council because we have to get the level of service policy approved, and we have to have that discussion with council, some feedback. So definitely bringing it back to budget would be a failure on my part to not deliver you with the right information at the right time to make those educated decisions.
Good. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. I just have a quick question too myself, and one thing. So one thing that caught my eye in the report, recommendation to get our Deputy Director of Services off the truck, if you will, as the saying goes, and let Mr. Melvin do his job that he's really hired to do. He's never complained about his workload. I know it's very heavy workload. He's never complained about it, but it is in this report blatantly obvious to me that step needs to be taken in the near future. And one of the solutions you presented, I think, in conjunction with that, was to hire or use a couple of our paid on call volunteers on a weekly basis, where they come in for a week and they're take a week off their work if they wanted to, and then have a week in Beaumont where they're part of the service. So that suggestion really intrigued me. I'm sure Melvin probably saw that too. Can you just walk me through that suggestion again? I think it was to do with 7-day-a-week firefighting using some paid on call personnel in a weekly capacity. Can you just walk me through that just briefly if you could?
Thank you for the question, Your Mayor. Certainly, what we're suggesting is a model where we don't hire all the full-time positions as full-time. So you'd have 8 full-time people and 2 paid on call. So those would be positions that are contracted, and they can fill them as they want. So I understand and I don't think your fire service is different than any other. Chief Melvin can maybe correct me. There are people who work shift work and they are your paid on call volunteers. And those people have typically been available during the day. When you've got an integrated service like this where, or combination service where you have full-time and paid on call or volunteer people, you don't want to create a them and us environment. So the way to bridge that is to allow them to be part of the process moving forward. And that would include 2 positions filled by paid on call people. Until you get to a point where you can afford full-time, and even then you could look at that as a model. Is that?
Okay. Yes, it does clarify. Thank you. Again, seeing no further comments from members of council. Any questions? That's for the motion. We'll get to that. Yeah, thanks. Having said that, again, I want to thank you for the report. It is very, very detailed. And as some council members mentioned, we want to make sure that this report is the last we do for a number of years because it is comprehensive and it does take all services combined, which other reports really didn't do. And to be fair to the other reports, this is actually much more comprehensive and outlines many options for moving forward from a capacity perspective as well as a financial perspective. You know, one of you mentioned, you know, do what you can afford while you can afford to do it, but then make sure what we're trying to do is not just bad money after good, as the saying goes. You want to make sure you do things in steps. And this, we're relying on our administration to guide us through the next few months on this report, coming back to us at budget with some recommendations, and then recommendations coming in the subsequent budgets down the road to try and get us to a higher level of service for our residents. And fortunately, we are a very safe community. We're very proud of that. We're also very well equipped. Your report mentioned our firefighting department is well equipped and well led, which is pretty important to us as well too. So with that, I want to thank you for your presentation. Again, it's great work, a lot of information to digest on a Tuesday night, but we'll probably be seeing you again at some point down the road. So with that, we'll move on to the motion part of our discussion. So again, thank you very much for coming this evening and joining us and spending time with us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and your administration has our phone number if they have questions.
I'm sure they do. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Yes, thank you all very much for coming. Now, normally we take a break at 7:30, but we're going to keep going right now and move into the motion part from this discussion, and then we'll have a short break and we'll continue on with our evening this evening. So, Madam Clerk, I believe the next step is to put the motion on the screen, and I'll have Councilor Van Nieuwkerk move the motion, and we can then discuss it. And I want to touch on concern a couple of council members have about this motion. I'll get to that when let's make the motion. So, Councilor Van Nieuwkerk, would you make the motion, please? Your mic is on.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to get the motion on the floor. And the motion is that the Alberta Indigenous and Municipal Police Transition Grant Program application be approved and that the Chief Administrative Officer be authorized to sign the application on behalf of the City of Beaumont. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Would you speak to it right off the get-go, or I have a comment to make? If you want to go first, go right ahead.
I guess I'll just speak briefly is that as administration has stated and Deputy CEO has stated, the title of this is a little bit perplexing. So there's probably a little bit of discussion we should have, I would suggest, as we look to move this forward. Ultimately, you know, there is some financial support to move some of what we've just heard forward attached to this. So look forward to supporting it and moving on after some discussion on a little bit of clarity here. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. You read my mind on that one. So, Ms. O'Neill, I may put you on the spot for a moment here. A couple of members of council suggested to me that the title of the grant is not exactly the best. It does sort of give the impression that if you're looking to move to a municipal police force away from the RCMP, we're going to help you. That's how the grant kind of reads with the title. My interpretation is it's not exactly that. And by applying for this grant does not automatically imply that we're going to move away from the RCMP. But I think many people in the public have that perception based on the grant title itself. So can you clarify for us that if this motion was to go forward, it does not automatically assume we're going to go down that path of leaving the RCMP? That I think is a perception in the public since this grant was first announced. So if I'm wrong on that, please correct me or give us some guidance on how we move forward in this. Ms. O'Neill, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, you're correct in everything you've just said. We've gone through the grant application and it does allow for further analysis into a regional approach, and how we interpret regional approaches, again, working with the Beaumont Detachment, Leduc Detachment, perhaps Central Alberta District, RCMP, to see if there's any services that can be delivered more efficiently or effectively. We know the cost of policing is quite high, so we think it's worthwhile to apply for the grant. And who knows, we may not be successful, but we were hoping to apply.
Thank you,
Thank
Ms. O'Neill. It does help, I believe, but with that, open the floor to questions. Members of council on the motion, please. Councillor Penrod.
Sometimes I think my mic is possessed because if I'm even close to it, somehow before my light turns on, you know that I'm thinking about it. So
Well,
that's why
I
you're
got
the
that
mayor.
Peripheral vision going, you know.
That's why you're the mayor and I'm not.
I see
I
all,
appreciate it.
but I did see your light flashes. It's weird. We'll get it checked out.
Thank
Meantime,
you.
you've got the floor.
Thank you. So I just want to stretch that concern a little bit. I'm actually maybe less concerned about the public perception of the title of this grant, and concerned is maybe too strong a word, but I wonder if there's the possibility that, presuming that we're successful in applying for this grant, receiving it, if we're then lumped in with a bucket of other municipalities who are looking to transfer away from our CMP services, and then potentially used to kind of build that case for a provincial police force. I don't know if I'm for that or against it, but I am against our municipality being used for those kind of somebody else's political motives. And so just wonder if there's any thought you've already had to how we mitigate against that risk.
Ms. O'Neill, want to take a stab at that?
Sure. Through the mayor to Councillor Penrod, we would go through an RFP process to find the consultant, and the objectives in the RFP would be clearly laid out. In terms of any political risks, again, there will be administrative oversight into the report, and likely, depending on the contents of the report, that information would be made public. So if someone were, politically use this, as you're implying, I'm not sure how effective that would be. Yeah. Thanks.
Does that help, Ms. Councillor Penrod? Thank you. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I pulled up the website just to see what it did say, and it does look like we're looking at a new model of policing is what it reads, but at the same time, applying for it doesn't mean we're going to get it. I'm not so sure I like what it says that we're looking into. So my question is, if we didn't get this $30,000, Chief Melvin, is this going to stop the train here? Because that's not as significant an amount of money that we couldn't find it elsewhere. That's my concern.
Director Melvin.
Through the mayor to Councillor Bernhard. Obviously, my role is internally, besides operation, is the administration of protective services. And one of those is to constantly look at the budget. We're well aware on what the cost of the RCMP service contract is to our municipality, and what limited control we have over increases that happen outside of the city of Beaumont. This is by no way, whether we get the grant, apply for the grant, or don't get the grant, is going to hinder what we're trying to do moving through the process. This is just another option that's on the table, an opportunity where we can collectively gather some more data to see if there's any weight behind it. But right now, it is not going to hinder or stop what we're trying to do here with determining level of service, moving forward with the plan on what protective services is, what impact that has on other city departments and the residents. But by no way, if we don't get it, it's not going to, I guess, burden anything. If we do get it, obviously there'll be more work, but if we don't, we're going to continue on as per normal. Our timelines of bringing things back to council will be the same. So,
could I just?
Yes, please.
To clarify, you said if we do get it, it will be more work. What did you mean by that? And maybe that.
Well, obviously, after dealing with this consultant, we would have to deal with another consultant. So that's the work that I'm talking about. But overall, it's a collective effort within administration. So I don't think it'll be too much of a burden to go down this route. And like I said, if we do or we don't, it's not going to hinder our process moving forward.
May not, but I guess, again, I'll speak to it. I'm feeling as if we could be listed on a website somewhere as having gone for this grant, and then it's being perceived that we're looking at a policing model different than what we have. with RCMP, and I think that's my main fear. And at this point, I don't think we need to go for this grant, so I'd be voting against it.
Fair enough, Counselor. Appreciate your comments. Councilor McGough-Swain, your mic is on.
Yeah, thanks. Personally, I don't really care what the grant is called. I think I'll take any support from the province. They need to help us with this, and call it whatever you want. I trust administration will structure that appropriately. I'm picking up a theme here around, the concern around the perception, particularly with our relationship with the RCMP. So I know administration has a very strong relationship with them. I wonder if they could just speak to how we're kind of communicating with them through this to avoid any potential concerns that they may see with a confusing motion that we have in front of us.
Ms. O'Neill or Mr. Melvin? Ms. O'Neill, your mic is on. I guess I picked you, I guess.
Through the mayor to Councillor McGough-Swain, thank you for the question. The RCMP is aware that we were bringing this to council with the intent of applying for the grant should council approve, and they were also engaged with some of the work that TSI did. So they're well aware that we're looking to do a deeper analysis on the policing aspect.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, this is all we're looking for right now is some analysis. And if the province is going to give us some cash to do it, sign me up. So I support this.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. I will try and provide some small background if I can on this overall discussion. Part of mid-sized city mayors caucus, there's 25 mayors involved in this group, representing 1.25 million people across the province. And we had some discussions at our recent meeting about the grant and how some municipalities are simply saying they've already had discussions at their council. I won't say who they are, but they've decided they're happy with the RCMP. However, it never hurts to do a review, and the province is giving some money to do a review. So that's how they're looking at it. They're not taking it as that automatically you're supporting a provincial police force, because again, the title of the grant isn't exactly, unbiased, if you will. However, many municipalities are simply taking the position, as Sam mentioned a moment ago, there's money from the province to use to do a study and want to take advantage of it. So I'm not saying that's right or wrong. Just many communities don't want to leave the RCMP, but they're looking at this as a way to review their current services and find better solutions. So they're getting money from the province to help them do that. So that's their perspective. So I'm trying to help you give you a comfort zone with how other municipalities are looking at this without identifying who they are, because that's not fair to them. Having said that, any further discussion on this motion before I call for the vote? Seeing none, Council, would you please vote on the motion before us? Councillor Penrod, your mic's not coming on. Oh, thank you. The motion carries 4 in favor, 2 opposed. Councillors Penrod and Barnhart in opposition. Motion carries 4-2. Thank you, Council. With that, it is 8 o'clock. We'll take a 10-minute break and we'll come back with our next item on our agenda, which is 8.1 Bylaw 1046-24 Elan 2 Neighborhood Structure Plan Bylaw, first reading. Thank you, Ms. Shima. Appreciate that. We are back live at 8:12, and I'll call the meeting back to order. And our next order of business this evening is 8.1 on our agenda, Bylaw 1046-24 Elan 2 Neighborhood Structure Plan Bylaw, first reading. And Ms. Katrina, I see your last name here, but I'm going to probably make him miss it up. So I'm just calling Ms. Trina, if that's okay. Thank you. Good Ukrainian girl like myself. Appreciate it. You have the floor. Let me get your mic on here. Yes. First reading, please.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Daniluk and members of council. My name is Katrina Tarnowski, and I'm a long-range planner with the Planning and Development Department. I'm joined this evening by Matthew Grattan, a senior long-range planner, Joanna Swong, manager of long-range planning, and Trevor Maninka, long-range engineer. Administration is presenting 2 bylaws together for council's consideration and first reading. These being bylaw 104624, Elan 2 Neighborhood Structure Plan Bylaw, and bylaw 1047-24, Elan 2 Neighborhood Land Use Bylaw Amending Bylaw. The first of these bylaws is to establish a new land use concept, objectives, and policies for future development in a new neighborhood in the west of Beaumont, while the second of these 2 bylaws would redistrict a portion of the lands in this neighborhood from the Agricultural Holdings District to the Integrated Neighborhood District. The Elan 2 Neighborhood Structure Plan, or NSP, is proposed for a single quarter section within the larger Elan Area Structure Plan located to the south of the first Elan NSP approved in 2018. The full Elan 2 NSP is available on pages 255 to 344 of the agenda package, and the land use concept map can be found on page 284. The applicant, ISL Engineering and Land Services, on behalf of the City of Beaumont, is advancing this plan to facilitate the development of a joint high school site located on city-owned land, representing the west half of the NSP area. However, the NSP provides a full neighborhood land use concept that also includes a mix of low and medium density residential housing, a mixed-use urban village, a commercial site, and an open space network with neighborhood parks and stormwater management facilities linked by trails and pathways. The plan proposes approximately 1,344 new dwelling units that will accommodate 2,746 residents at full build-out. The neighborhood density will be 54 units per net residential hectare, which exceeds the minimum required by the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Plan. The plan also provides guidance for the transportation network in this area, both for vehicular traffic and active modes, as well as water, stormwater, and sanitary servicing. Administration has worked closely with the applicant to ensure the plan and supporting documentation are consistent with higher level plans, strategies, and policies that guide Beaumont's growth and development, including the Municipal Development Plan, Transportation Master Plan, Council Strategic Plan, and regional policies such as the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Plan and Regional Agricultural Master Plan. Moving on to bylaw 1047-24 to amend our zoning blueprint, the Beaumont Land Use Bylaw, which regulates the use and development of land and buildings within the city. This application is to redistrict portions of the proposed Elan 2 neighborhood, lands legally described as Plan 4, Block 24, Lot 50, in the northeast quarter of Section 28, Township 50, Range 24, west of the 4th Meridian. This represents part of the western portion of the neighborhood on lands owned by the City of Beaumont. The lands are proposed to be redistricted from the Agricultural Holdings District to the Integrated Neighborhood District in accordance with the land use concept of the Elan 2 NSP. You can view the redistricting boundary in Schedule A to the bylaw on page 356 of the agenda. This redistricting would allow for development of a school site, a portion of the planned mixed-use urban village, and a portion of the neighborhood's open space network, which incorporates a stormwater management facility. Administration worked with the applicant to conduct public engagement for both the NSP and redistricting applications together. This involved pre-application consultation meetings with stakeholders in June 2023, an in-person open house last November, and then circulation of the application during January and February to affected landowners within a 100-meter radius, as well as to impacted agencies and to internal city departments. Administration's opinion is that this NSP and redistricting are consistent with the city's overall policy framework and the overarching Elan Area Structure Plan, and are compatible with the surrounding existing and future plan development. Should council give first reading to the NSP this evening, then afterwards you may consider also giving first reading to the redistricting, as the latter is contingent on the former. A public hearing and second and third readings will then be scheduled for both bylaws. This concludes my presentation, and administration welcomes any questions from council on the two applications and advises council that if they have questions concerning specifics of the school site planning and design or construction details, such as school amenities and sporting fields, those may be better addressed at a separate council meeting, or council may ask administration for a report back to council at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tarnowski. Did I get that right? Close enough?
Yeah.
Perfect, great. Appreciate that. So it is first reading for both bylaws. Normally, council, we are free to ask clarifying questions. Questions that involve debating the bylaw is usually reserved for second reading, which will happen at a later time. So with that, I will ask for any questions from council on the first bylaw, 1046-24 on the neighborhood structure plan at first reading. Actually, sorry, I'm going to ask for motion to do first reading, then I'll open up the question, my mistake. So I'll ask for a member of council to move first reading when the motion is on the screen, and then I'll ask council to ask any clarifying questions should they want to. I just got myself mixed up there. So Councillor Barnhart, would you make the motion, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd be pleased to. I move that bylaw 1046-24, Elan 2, neighborhood structure plan bylaw be given first reading.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you wish to speak to it as the mover?
At this point, no, I think I would wait until the public hearing.
Thank you very much. Any subsequent clarifying question, members of council on first reading of this of 1046-24? Seeing none. Oh, Councilman Newkirk, sorry. You have the floor.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple clarifying questions. Keep them brief tonight, I suppose. At the beginning of the report, it speaks to the NSP being planned to achieve a density of 54 units per net residential hectare. What is the minimum required density in the region?
35 units per net residential hectare.
Okay, I'll leave anything subsequent on that for the future. Second, council's often discussing the limits to MR as developments come together. And just wondering if I'm reading correctly that school MR and park and open space MR with this one is going to be 24.4% of the developable area. Is that correct? Page 25 in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm just having a hard time going through that top table.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Van Newkirk. Yes, that's correct. That's of the total area, gross developable area.
Gross developable
yeah.
area. Okay.
So it is a larger MR than is usually dedicated.
Yeah, and a usual dedication would be 10%.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah. So I just wanted to point out like that this is a larger piece. So yeah, I'll stop there, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Phil, your light was on. Is it off now? It's not a mic malfunction. We took it off. Okay, just to make sure you had a chance to speak. Okay, well, that sometimes happens. I know it happens to me all the time. Councillor McCook, you have the floor.
Hello, just a quick one. Will anything in the geotechnical investigation increase the costs of the high school site?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the geotechnical report did provide recommendations. Most of the storm pond will be used on the site to fill the existing wetland and a drainage course as well. So most of it will be kept on site. We're trying to minimize any shipping costs. So there may be a stockpile on site for a while as that gets moved around.
Great, thank you. That's it for now, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I have no questions myself, so seeing no further questions from members of council. One last time, seeing none. Council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion for first reading of bylaw 1046-24. And that carries unanimously, 6-0. No opposing. Thank you. We'll now move on to a motion for first reading for 1047-24, Elan 2 neighborhood land use bylaw. Member of council willing to move the first reading motion? Councilor McCook, you have the floor.
I move that bylaw 10047-24, Elan 2 neighborhood land use bylaw amending bylaw be given first reading.
Thank you, Councilor. Do you wish to speak to it at this time?
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Other members of council with any clarifying questions on bylaw 1047-24? Okay, all right. Seeing no clarifying questions, we'll be talking more a second reading, of course. So with that, council, I'll ask you to vote on first reading of 1047-24. Also carries unanimously, 6-0. Thank you very much, council. Thank you to our presenters, much appreciated. Ms. Raymond, thanks for tuning in from home there. Thank you very much for being with us when needed it. And Mr. Johannes Wong, thank you for being here as well too. Next on our agenda is item 8.3, bylaw 1051-24, fees and changes amendment, first, second, and third reading. Mr. DeBlanco, I believe you'll be speaking to this issue, and your microphone is on, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening to the mayor and council. I'm Curtis DeBlanco, the director of finance. Council adopted the 2024 fees and charges bylaw in December of 2023. And at the regular council meeting of February 27th, a motion was made to amend the current transit fees in Schedule A. The amendments to the city's transit fees are listed in the report, and the bylaw has been updated to reflect these proposed changes. I'm not going to really read each of them off. The 2024 municipal operating budget does include a forecast of 149,000 for transit revenue. Reduction in these rates will certainly have some impact on overall transit revenue. However, it's unknown at this time whether the impact of the price reduction will have an offsetting increase in ridership. We just don't have the data on things like price elasticity. Administration will obviously gather this data in 2024 and include within the 2025 proposed budget an adjustment either up or down to reflect the information we would have at that time. At this point, I'll turn the floor back over to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blanco. I appreciate that. So we are proposing this evening to do first, second, and third reading. So we will do first reading. We'll have a motion and then we'll vote on that. And we'll have second reading for debate purposes. And then we'll ask for unanimous consent to go to third reading. Should we get unanimous consent? We do a third reading this evening on a vote and we go forward. Madam Clerk, did I miss anything on that? Did I got it right? Perfect. Thank you very much. With that, I'll ask for a member of council to move first reading on the fees and charges under bylaw 1051-24. Councilor McGough your mic is on.
Yeah, I will move that bylaw 1051-24, 2024 fees and charges amending bylaw. A bylaw to amend certain fees, rates, and charges for municipal services be given first reading.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing that, I'll probably go to the vote first, and we can have a solid order debate to second reading, because we're doing second reading this evening. So with that, unless any objections, I'm going to go straight to the vote on first reading. See no objections. Council, would you please vote on first reading on bylaw 1051-24? That carries unanimously, 6-0. Thank you, Council. Member of Council willing to move second reading of bylaw 1051-24. Councillor Penrod, your mic is on.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that bylaw 1051-24 be given second reading.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you wish to speak to it at this time? If you want to.
Yes, I will speak briefly, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to supporting this motion. That's probably where I stood already before tonight's meeting, but a couple different times tonight was re-underlined for me the essential nature of building a viable transit system. And I'm the first one to admit that we're not all the way there yet, but this step marks a significant improvement on the service that we're offering. And I think helps lay some of the groundwork, including an expansion of our partnership with some of our regional neighbors in Leduc especially. And so just again, to be explicit, our time and our reports, our discussion with Edmonton Global tonight underlined again that this is a piece that our community lags in the region, and it can literally be costing us investment and opportunities. And so I'm happy to support this motion this evening.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate those comments. Councillor McGough you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good comments, Councillor Penrod. For me, this is all about making sure that we deliver on our commitment to provide transit. This is, really a discussion around the value of transit. And if we, but my personal view is, the shift that we're suggesting here is going to make it more affordable and more people are going to ride the bus. And I recognize that's a philosophical argument, one that I personally stand behind. If we have it too high, no one's going to take the bus, and we're all going to be the first people to get the pictures of the empty buses. So let's build up our ridership. Let's make it affordable so that we can encourage our residents to take the system, and appreciate all the communication efforts that's gone out so far around this. Certainly heard from a lot of people who are interested in seeing how they can participate in it. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate those comments. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I too support this wholeheartedly. I think the telling point will be when we see what ridership we can attract, and I think this helps us in that regard. It's been a long time coming, trying to get our transit to a place where it actually can provide the service that we needed to, and continue to improve it as we go. So I think this is a step in the right direction, and for all the reasons that have been said, including supporting those that need transit, as well as those that want to use transit. I think this is the right thing to be doing, so I will support it.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. So for the comments, I'll wade in myself. I wasn't here 2 weeks ago when the topic first came up. I was elsewhere at the time. I'm very pleased to support this motion. I do believe that when people really take advantage of the enhanced service we're offering with the new transit program, it'll build on itself for ridership. Making the fare more affordable is a good, smart move to really get people enticed to try our transit system and get a chance to figure out they can actually go, they work in Edmonton, they can get downtown and be home for supper, or be home in the afternoon if they want to, or be a student and leave at 10 o'clock in the morning, be there for noon hour class and be home by 3. They can't do that now. So many people who can't take transit because the timing didn't work for them now can with our enhanced service. And this extra little incentive on the pricing, I think is going to really enhance our ridership, and it's going to pay dividends for us and make this a very, very successful transit program. So I'm thrilled to be able to support this motion. This bylaw motion. So having seen no further comments from anybody, Council, I'll ask you to vote on second reading of bylaw 1051-24. Thank you, Council. That carries unanimously, 6-0. At this point, we are going to go to third reading. I do require unanimous consent from council members to move to third reading. Does not mean you have to vote for third reading. You can still vote against if you wanted to, but we need consensus to have third reading in the same evening. Do I have consensus by show of hands to move to third reading? As actual vote for consensus? Oh, okay, my first mistake of the night. All right then. So, okay, there was maybe one more, maybe one more, but come on, who's counting? I guess everybody's counting but me. All right, I will move that bylaw 1051-24 be considered for third reading. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Council, would you please vote? Moving to third reading. It also carries unanimously, 6-0. Thank you, Council. Member of Council willing to move third reading of bylaw 1051-24. Councillor Van Newkirk, your mic is on.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Just be 1 second. There we go.
I'll move that bylaw 1051-24 be given third reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on third reading. Seeing none, Council, would you please vote on third reading? And that carries unanimously, 6-0. Thank you, Council. I appreciate the effort on this and the result, and I'm sure it's going to be very good for our community and our residents. Next on our agenda is councillor inquiries, responses, and reports. 9192 and 9394 and 95 have all been answered by administration, so you have those answers back as council members. Are there any new inquiries of members of council this evening? Councillor Penrod, your mic is on.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make the following councillor inquiry. Please provide to administration, please provide information related to council policy C50, property tax relief, and include the following: background information on bylaw 771-11 and its amending bylaw 980-20, the date they came into force and effect, and any schedules for their review. Any further rationale for the variety of penalties applied at the various stipulated trigger dates, and any advice or support that is offered to any resident with taxes owing as a matter of policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further councillor inquiries this evening be brought forward? See none. Moving on our agenda then is category item number 10, CEO update. Mr. Schwartz, under the weather this evening, and Deputy CEO Ms. O'Neill will take over and provide the CEO update. Ms. O'Neill, your mic is on.
Good evening, Council. I have a few updates for you in the community on behalf of CAO Schwartz. In our Community Services Department, our spring and summer registration day is March 20th at 9 a.m. Resident registration, so that's the early access for residents, begins on March 18th at 9 a.m. And for the first time, we are implementing an invoice delay. There will be a delay of up to 8 hours before you receive your invoice by email. This precaution is in order to mitigate any system overload. The FCSS and Youth Center staff will be attending or have just finished attending the Family Resource Night at the Champ Valley School this evening. And the FCSF staff will be attending the regional interagency meeting in Leduc on March 14th. Finally, the Youth Center will be hosting a one-day wellness retreat called Petite Retreat on Wednesday, March 27th for youth aged 12 to 17. Recently, our economic development team had a presence at the International Council of Shopping Centers, ICSC, which was held in Whistler January 21st to 23rd. Administration attended the event to network and promote Beaumont's rising demand by our community for retail goods and services. We also participated alongside regional partners in a regional booth by promoting multiple municipalities in the area. With the new commercial development coming online this year, there was good interest by commercial realtors representing clients for national food brands, retail, professional franchise services like dental, medical centers, restaurants, fueling stations, etc. We engaged with upwards of 150 attendees during the event and are following up with those who have expressed interest in Beaumont. And to close, our infrastructure team, we are officially making the switch from winter to spring. We are doing our changeover and transitioning from winter maintenance to spring and summer maintenance. So with the warmer temperatures, it's time to close the outdoor rinks for everyone's safety. And another favorite time of year for us, street sweeping will begin once all streets are dry and will take up to 8 weeks to clean every street in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. Any questions for Ms. O'Neill on the CEO update? Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. Appreciate that. Next on our agenda is item 11, correspondence. Madam Clerk, any correspondence? I don't believe there is. Thank you for clarifying that. Next is item 12, any notice of the motion to be brought forward by a member of council this evening. Councillor Penrod, your mic is on.
Thank you, Mayor. And just probably don't say this enough, but I don't, but thanks to our legal and legislative services team for the support that you give us in bringing forward, in helping us clean up our inquiries and our notices of motion so that hopefully they're not any more encumbered than they need to be. So at the March 26, 2023 regular council meeting, I will move that a one-pager for creating a full-time environmental coordinator position as recommended in the environmental master plan be included in the 2025 budget deliberations.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further notices of the motion this evening be brought forward by a member of council?
I do have a second one. Mayor.
Thank you. I wasn't aware, so thank you. When you're ready, when it's on the screen for you.
At the March 26th, 2023 regular council meeting, I will move that by the end of second quarter of 2024, administration prepare a report on options for creating a city event to recognize the contributions of local healthcare providers, including options for funding the event, and further, that the report provide an update on the city's efforts arising from the health needs assessment process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Last call. Any further notice of the motion this evening from any members of council? Seeing none, thank you. Next agenda is closed session. We have no closed session, Madam Clerk, that I'm aware of this evening. Thank you. And with that, we come to adjournment. We are adjourned at 8:37. Thank you for attending this evening and enjoy your night. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Shima. Appreciate that. We are back live at 8:12, and I'll call the meeting back to order. And our next order of business this evening is 8.1 on our agenda, bylaw 1046-24 Elan 2 Neighborhood Structure Plan bylaw, first reading. And Ms. Katrina, I see your last name here, but I'm going to probably make him miss it up. So I'm just calling Ms. Trina if that's okay. Thank you. Good Ukrainian girl like myself. Appreciate it. You have the floor. Let me get your mic on here. Yes. First reading, please.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Daniluk and members of council. My name is Katrina Tarnowski, and I'm a long-range planner with the Planning and Development Department. I'm joined this evening by Matthew Grattan, a senior long-range planner, Joanna Swang, Manager of Long Range Planning, and Trevor Maninka, Long Range Engineer. Administration is presenting two bylaws together for council's consideration and first reading. These being bylaw 104624, a Land 2 Neighborhood Structure Plan bylaw, and bylaw 1047-24, a Land 2 Neighborhood Land Use Bylaw amending bylaw. The first of these bylaws is to establish a new land use concept, objectives, and policies for future development in a new neighborhood in the west of Beaumont, while the second of these two bylaws would redistrict a portion of the lands in this neighborhood from the Agricultural Holdings District to the Integrated Neighborhood District. The Land 2 Neighborhood Structure Plan, or NSP, is proposed for a single quarter section within the larger Elan Area Structure Plan, located to the south of the first Elan NSP approved in 2018. The full Elan 2 NSP is available on pages 255 to 344 of the agenda package, and the land use concept map can be found on page 284. The applicant, ISL Engineering and Land Services, on behalf of the City of Beaumont, is advancing this plan to facilitate the development of a joint high school site located on city-owned land, representing the west half of the NSP area. However, the NSP provides a full neighborhood land use concept that also includes a mix of low and medium density residential housing, a mixed-use urban village, a commercial site, and an open space network with neighborhood parks and stormwater management facilities linked by trails and pathways. The plan proposes approximately 1,344 new dwelling units that will accommodate 2,746 residents at full build-out. The neighborhood density will be 54 units per net residential hectare, which exceeds the minimum required by the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Plan. The plan also provides guidance for the transportation network in this area, both for vehicular traffic and active modes, as well as water, stormwater, and sanitary servicing. Administration has worked closely with the applicant to ensure the plan and supporting documentation are consistent with higher level plans, strategies, and policies that guide Beaumont's growth and development, including the Municipal Development Plan, Transportation Master Plan, Council Strategic Plan, and regional policies such as the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Plan and Regional Agricultural Master Plan. Moving on to bylaw 1047-24 to amend our zoning blueprint, the Beaumont Land Use Bylaw, which regulates the use and development of land and buildings within the city. This application is to redistrict portions of the proposed Elan 2 neighborhood, lands legally described as Plan 4, Block 24, Lot 50, in the northeast quarter of Section 28, Township 50, Range 24, west of the 4th Meridian. This represents part of the western portion of the neighborhood on lands owned by the City of Beaumont. The lands are proposed to be redistricted from the Agricultural Holdings District to the Integrated Neighborhood District in accordance with the land use concept of the Elan 2 NSP. You can view the redistricting boundary in Schedule A to the bylaw on page 356 of the agenda. This redistricting would allow for development of a school site, a portion of the planned mixed-use urban village, and a portion of the neighborhood's open space network, which incorporates a stormwater management facility. Administration worked with the applicant to conduct public engagement for both the NSP and redistricting applications together. This involved pre-application consultation meetings with stakeholders in June 2023, an in-person open house last November, and then circulation of the application during January and February to affected landowners within a 100-meter radius, as well as to impacted agencies and to internal city departments. Administration's opinion is that this NSP and redistricting are consistent with the city's overall policy framework and the overarching Elan Area Structure Plan, and are compatible with the surrounding existing and future plan development. Should council give first reading to the NSP this evening, then afterwards you may consider also giving first reading to the redistricting, as the latter is contingent on the former. A public hearing and second and third readings will then be scheduled for both bylaws. This concludes my presentation, and administration welcomes any questions from council on the two applications. and advises council that if they have questions concerning specifics of the school site planning and design or construction details, such as school amenities and sporting fields, those may be better addressed at a separate council meeting, or council may ask administration for a report back to council at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tarnowski. Did I get that right? Close enough?
Yeah.
Perfect, great. Appreciate that. So it is first reading for both bylaws. Normally, council, we are free to ask clarifying questions. Questions that involve debating the bylaw is usually reserved for second reading, which will happen at a later time. So with that, I will ask for any questions from council on the first bylaw, 1046-24 on the neighborhood structure plan at first reading. Actually, sorry, I'm going to ask for motion to do first reading, then I'll open up the question, my mistake. So I'll ask for a member of council to move first reading when the motion is on the screen, and then I'll ask council to ask any clarifying questions should they want to. I just got myself mixed up there. So Councillor Barnhart, would you make the motion, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd be pleased to. I move that bylaw 1046-24, Elan 2 neighborhood structure plan bylaw be given first reading.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you wish to speak to it as the mover?
At this point, no, I think I would wait until the public hearing.
Thank you very much. Any subsequent clarifying question, members of council on first reading of this of 1046-24? Seeing none. Oh, Councilman Newkirk, sorry. You have the floor.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple clarifying questions. Keep them brief tonight, I suppose. At the beginning of the report, it speaks to the NSP being planned to achieve a density of 54 units per net residential hectare. What is the minimum required density in the region?
35 units per net residential hectare.
Okay, I'll leave anything subsequent on that for the future. Second, council's often discussing the limits to MR as as developments come together. And just wondering if I'm reading correctly that school MR and park and open space MR with this one is going to be 24.4% of the developable area. Is that correct? Page 25 in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm just having a hard time going through that top table.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Van Newkirk. Yes, that's correct. That's of the total area, gross developable area.
Gross developable
yeah.
area. Okay.
So it is a larger MR than is usually dedicated.
Yeah, and a usual dedication would be 10%.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah. So I just wanted to point out like that this is a larger piece. So yeah, I'll stop there, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Phil, your light was on. Is it off now? It's on a mic malfunction. We took it off. Okay, just to make sure you had a chance to speak. Okay, well, that sometimes happens. I know it happens to me all the time. Councillor McCook, you have the floor.
Hello, just a quick one. Will anything in the geotechnical investigation increase the costs of the high school site?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the geotechnical report did provide recommendations. Most of the storm pond will be used on the site to fill the existing wetland and a drainage course as well. So most of it will be kept on site. We're trying to minimize any shipping costs. So there may be a stockpile on site for a while as that gets moved around.
Great, thank you. That's it for now, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I have no questions myself, so seeing no further questions from members of council. One last time, seeing none. Council, I'll ask you to vote on the motion for first reading of bylaw 1046-24. And that carries unanimously, 6-0. No opposing. Thank you. We'll now move on to a motion for first reading for 1047-24, Elan 2 neighborhood land use bylaw. Member of council willing to move the first reading motion? Councilor McCook, you have the floor.
I move that bylaw 10047-24, Elan 2 neighborhood land use bylaw amending bylaw be given first reading.
Thank you, Councilor. Do you wish to speak to it at this time?
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Other members of council with any clarifying questions on bylaw 1047-24? Okay, all right. Seeing no clarifying questions, we'll be talking more a second reading, of course. So with that, council, I'll ask you to vote on first reading of 1047-24. Also carries unanimously, 6-0. Thank you very much, council. Thank you to our presenters, much appreciated. Ms. Raymond, thanks for tuning in from home there. Thank you very much for being with us when needed it. And Mr. Johannes Wong, thank you for being here as well too. Next on our agenda is item 8.3, bylaw 1051-24, fees and changes amendment, first, second, and third reading. Mr. DeBlanco, I believe you'll be speaking to this issue, and your microphone is on. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening to the mayor and council. I'm Curtis DeBlanco, the director of finance. Council adopted the 2024 fees and charges bylaw in December of 2023. And at the regular council meeting of February 27th, a motion was made to amend the current transit fees in Schedule A. The amendments to the city's transit fees are listed in the report, and the bylaw has been updated to reflect these proposed changes. I'm not going to really read each of them off. The 2024 municipal operating budget does include a forecast of $149,000 for transit revenue. Reduction in these rates will certainly have some impact on overall transit revenue. However, it's unknown at this time whether the impact of the price reduction will have an offsetting increase in ridership. We just don't have the data on things like price elasticity. Administration will obviously gather this data in 2024 and include within the 2025 proposed budget an adjustment either up or down to reflect the information we would have at that time. At this point, I'll turn the floor back over to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blanco. I appreciate that. So we are proposing this evening to do first, second, and third reading. So we will do first reading. We'll have a motion and then we'll vote on that. And we'll have second reading for debate purposes. And then we'll ask for unanimous consent to go to third reading. Should we get unanimous consent? We do a third reading this evening on a vote and we go forward. Madam Clerk, did I miss anything on that? Did I got it right? Perfect. Thank you very much. With that, I'll ask for a member of council to move first reading on the fees and charges under bylaw 1051-24. Councilor McGough-Swain, your mic is on.
Yeah, I will move that bylaw 1051-24, 2024 fees and charges amending bylaw, a bylaw to amend certain fees, rates, and charges for municipal services be given first reading.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing that, I'll probably go to the vote first, and we can have a solid order debate to second reading, because we're doing second reading this evening. So with that, unless any objections, I'm going to go straight to the vote on first reading. See no objections. Council, would you please vote on first reading on bylaw 1051-24? That carries unanimously, 6-0. Thank you, Council. Member of Council willing to move second reading of bylaw 1051-24. Councillor Penrod, your mic is on.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that bylaw 1051-24 be given second reading.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you wish to speak to it at this time? If you want to.
Yes, I will speak briefly, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to supporting this motion. That's probably where I stood already before tonight's meeting, but a couple different times tonight was re-underlined for me the essential nature of building a viable transit system. And I'm the first one to admit that we're not all the way there yet, but this step marks a significant improvement on the service that we're offering. And I think helps lay some of the groundwork, including an expansion of our partnership with some of our regional neighbors in Leduc especially. And so just again, to be explicit, our time and our reports, our discussion with Edmonton Global tonight underlined again that this is a piece that our community lags in the region, and it can literally be costing us investment and opportunities. And so I'm happy to support this motion this evening.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate those comments. Councillor McGough-Swain, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good comments, Councillor Penrod. For me, this is all about making sure that we deliver on our commitment to provide transit. This is, really a discussion around the value of transit. And if we, but my personal view is, the shift that we're suggesting here is going to make it more affordable and more people are going to ride the bus. And I recognize that's a philosophical argument, one that I personally stand behind. If we have it too high, no one's going to take the bus, and we're all going to be the first people to get the pictures of the empty buses. So let's build up our ridership. Let's make it affordable so that we can encourage our residents to take the system, and appreciate all the communication efforts that's gone out so far around this. Certainly heard from a lot of people who are interested in seeing how they can participate in it. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate those comments. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I too support this wholeheartedly. I think the telling point will be when we see what ridership we can attract, and I think this helps us in that regard. It's been a long time coming, trying to get our transit to a place where it actually can provide the service that we need it to, and continue to improve it as we go. So I think this is a step in the right direction, and for all the reasons that have been said, including supporting those that need transit, as well as those that want to use transit. I think this is the right thing to be doing, so I will support it.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. So for the comments, I'll wade in myself. I wasn't here 2 weeks ago when the topic first came up. I was elsewhere at the time. I'm very pleased to support this motion. I do believe that when people really take advantage of the enhanced service we're offering with the new transit program, it'll build on itself for ridership. Making the fare more affordable is a good, smart move to really get people enticed to try our transit system and get a chance to figure out they can actually go, they work in Edmonton, they can get downtown and be home for supper, or be home in the afternoon if they want to, or be a student and leave at 10 o'clock in the morning, be there for noon hour class and be home by 3. They can't do that now. So many people who can't take transit because the timing didn't work for them now can with our enhanced service. And this extra little incentive on the pricing, I think is going to really enhance our ridership, and it's going to pay dividends for us and make this a very, very successful transit program. So I'm thrilled to be able to support this motion. This bylaw motion. So having seen no further comments from anybody, Council, I'll ask you to vote on second reading of bylaw 1051-24. Thank you, Council. That carries unanimously, 6-0. At this point, we are going to go to third reading. I do require unanimous consent from council members to move to third reading. Does not mean you have to vote for third reading. You can still vote against if you wanted to, but we need consensus to have third reading in the same evening. Do I have consensus by show of hands to move to third reading? As actual vote for consensus? Oh, okay, my first mistake of the night. All right then. So, okay, there was maybe one more, maybe one more, but come on, who's counting? I guess everybody's counting but me. All right, I will move that bylaw 1051-24 be considered for third reading. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Council, would you please vote? Moving to third reading. It also carries unanimously, 6-0. Thank you, Council. Member of Council willing to move third reading of bylaw 1051-24. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, your mic is on.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Just be 1 second. There we go.
I'll move that bylaw 1051-24 be given third reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on third reading. Seeing none, Council, would you please vote on third reading? And that carries unanimously, 6-0. Thank you, Council. I appreciate the effort on this and the result, and I'm sure it's going to be very good for our community and our residents. Next on our agenda is Councillor inquiries, responses, and reports. 9192 and 9394 and 95 have all been answered by administration, so you have those answers back as council members. Are there any new inquiries of members of council this evening? Councillor Penrod, your mic is on.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make the following councillor inquiry. Please provide to administration, please provide information related to council policy C50, property tax relief, and include the following: background information on bylaw 771-11 and its amending bylaw 980-20, the date they came into force and effect, and any schedules for their review. any further rationale for the variety of penalties applied at the various stipulated trigger dates, and any advice or support that is offered to any resident with taxes owing as a matter of policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Are there any further Counselor inquiries this evening be brought forward? See none. Moving on to our agenda then is category, item number 10, CEO update. Mr. Schwartz, under the weather this evening, and Deputy CEO, Ms. O'Neill, will take over and provide the CEO update. Ms. O'Neill, your mic is on.
Good evening, Council. I have a few updates for you in the community on behalf of CAO Schwartz. In our Community Services Department, our spring and summer registration day is March 20th at 9 a.m. Resident registration, so that's the early access for residents, begins on March 18th at 9 a.m. And for the first time, we are implementing an invoice delay. There will be a delay of up to 8 hours before you receive your invoice by email. This precaution is in order to mitigate any system overload. The FCSS and Youth Center staff will be attending or have just finished attending the Family Resource Night at the Champ Valley School this evening. And the FCSF staff will be attending the regional interagency meeting in Leduc on March 14th. Finally, the Youth Center will be hosting a one-day wellness retreat called Petite Retreat on Wednesday, March 27th for youth aged 12 to 17. Recently, our economic development team had a presence at the International Council of Shopping Centers, ICSC, which was held in Whistler January 21st to 23rd. Administration attended the event to network and promote Beaumont's rising demand by our community for retail goods and services. We also participated alongside regional partners in a regional booth by promoting multiple municipalities in the area. With the new commercial development coming online this year, there was good interest by commercial realtors representing clients for national food brands, retail, professional franchise services like dental, medical centers, restaurants, fueling stations, etc. We engaged with upwards of 150 attendees during the event and are following up with those who have expressed interest in Beaumont. And to close, our infrastructure team, we are officially making the switch from winter to spring. We are doing our changeover and transitioning from winter maintenance to spring and summer maintenance. So with the warmer temperatures, it's time to close the outdoor rinks for everyone's safety. And another favorite time of year for us, street sweeping will begin once all streets are dry and will take up to 8 weeks to clean every street in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. Any questions for Ms. O'Neill on the CEO update? Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. Appreciate that. Next on our agenda is item 11, correspondence. Madam Clerk, any correspondence? I don't believe there is. Thank you for clarifying that. Next is item 12, any notice of the motion to be brought forward by member of council this evening. Councillor Penrod, your mic is on.
Thank you, Mayor. And just probably don't say this enough, but I don't, but thanks to our legal and legislative services team for the support that you give us in bringing forward, in helping us clean up our inquiries and our notices of motion so that hopefully they're not any more encumbered than they need to be. So at the March 26, 2023 regular council meeting, I will move that a one-pager for creating a full-time environmental coordinator position as recommended in the environmental master plan be included in the 2025 budget deliberations.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further notices of the motion this evening be brought forward by member of council?
I do have a second one.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't aware, so thank you. When you're ready, when it's on the screen for you.
At the March 26th, 2023 regular council meeting, I will move that by the end of second quarter of 2024, administration prepare a report on options for creating a city event to recognize the contributions of local healthcare providers, including options for funding the event, and further, that the report provide an update on the city's efforts arising from the health needs assessment process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Last call. Any further notice of the motion this evening from any members of council? Seeing none, thank you. Next agenda is closed session. We have no closed session, Madam Clerk, that I'm aware of this evening. Thank you. And with that, we come to adjournment. We are adjourned at 8:37. Thank you for attending this evening and enjoy your night. Thank you.